Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Life in the dark is like a child's game of whack-a-mole, except that the game has a way of ending. You take the blindfold off your eyes, the bright light is blinding, but after a couple of seconds everything is fine. You are back in the familiar world. The game is over. But the real blindness is no longer a game. It does not end. You cannot remove the blindfold. You just have to try hard to get used to your new world and hope that one day you will get used to it. Caroline Clark was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. As she grew older, she spent less and less time sleeping. Although she had once dreamed that when she retired, she would sleep. It seems she never dreamed of anything else in her life. Well, here is the retirement, and sleep in a human way. Caroline has not learned. Too accustomed all her life to jump out of bed before morning dawn and run to do household chores. Well, what you need to redo, it's time to go to work, and from work you go the second series. Spin, spin, maybe then and go to bed early by midnight. That's partly why she was so infuriated by her sister-in-law's laziness to sleep until 6, because she herself had never had such happiness. The alarm clock gave its usual cheerful trill. 6, time to get up. Lisa reached out to turn off the annoying tune, but her palm slapped against the cool surface of the dresser. Her eyes were a mess, and for some reason she couldn't find her phone right away. Why? She grinned sadly. You'd think that was news. It was just that my eyesight had gotten worse again, and it had been happening all the time lately, so I couldn't even get used to it. As they say, not by the day, but by the hour, that is, by the alarm clock, Lisa fumbled for her phone and turned off the reminder. Squinting and trying not to panic, she glanced around the room. It was squalid. Really, really bad. The outline of the dresser was blurring, though she could still make out the drawers, the handles on them, though she couldn't see them at all anymore. The bright rectangle of the window, there it was, partially hidden by the curtains, but the patterns on them could not be seen. At least, not with the naked eye. But the closet on the far wall was no longer distinguishable at all, so big and inarticulate, a dark brown stain on the light background of wallpaper. Oh, and had to fight with her mother-in-law for this wallpaper. Caroline did not want to reconcile with her daughter-in-law's choice of light-colored wallpaper. They will turn yellow. In a year you'll re-glue them. We will. Lisa agreed nonchalantly. The mother-in-law pressed her lips together resentfully. She's a millionaire, too. You're used to shoveling money in. That's why you don't feel bad about changing the wallpaper every year. Lisa looked helplessly at her husband. Paul. He decided to comfort both of them at once. He put his arm around his wife's waist and smiled at his mother. Mom will look at the wallpaper at the store and see if we can find a darker one. The kind we like. You don't need dark wallpaper. Ashole, you need variegated wallpaper. In the flower there, in the herringbone and not boring and again beneficial. If where flies sit or a spot will appear, will be invisible. Right suggestion, Mother. With enthusiasm supported Paul. Exactly, Lisa. Tomorrow we'll go and look at the colorful wallpaper. At least you are my son with brains. Satisfied Mother said, maybe you'll live somehow. Before leaving the room of the newlyweds, she once again looked at her daughter-in-law and shook her head sadly. You only, son, do not give your wife the will. When the door behind the mother-in-law finally closed, Lisa attacked her husband with a furious whisper. What do you mean, Paul? We decided together that we wanted light-colored wallpaper, didn't we? We did. Nodded. We decided together. And when your mom has her say, you take her side instead of supporting me. That's just the way it looks, Lisa," Paul said with affectionate condescension in his voice. "You're being superficial, short-sighted. My mom is an old-school person, not formatted for the new times. Right? Right. So what's the use of trying to change her mind? She won't change, and so, to avoid scandals, and for the sake of keeping peace in the family, it's best to do what? Agree and then do it your way. Tomorrow we'll go to the store, buy light-colored wallpaper, then say that the cute modeled ones were not found. Is that slick?" "Very," Lisa mumbled, though she disagreed inwardly. Why should she ever have to answer to her mother-in-law for her own choice of wallpaper? "Paul," she began without much hope, "couldn't we get our own place?" "There you go again. No, listen to me. You understand. Your mom is good, but here we think of ways to avoid quarrels, and she interferes in our personal affairs. It's unpleasant, but I have to bite my tongue, because it's her house, and she's the boss, and this way we'd live independently. Do you like to live like that?" Paul sighed heavily and turned away. "We've talked about this, Lisa." Slowly he said, "Mom is a lonely person. She's buried my father for 10 years, and I'm the only one she has left. If you and I move out, what will she be left with? Wander around an empty house and gradually go crazy. No one to say a word. I know she has a temper, but what reason is there to abandon a loved one? And she's old. She'll fall, for example, and you can't call anyone for help. You can't do that, you know." "I understand." Of course, she understood that Caroline Clark is a stranger to her, but Paul is her mother. It's understandable that he's worried about her. They managed to defend the light-colored wallpaper, though it was not without a scandal on Caroline's part, accusing her son of willishness and Lisa of stupidity. But now the wallpaper has served its purpose, and the cupboard stands out against it. "Lisa," my mother-in-law's voice came from behind the door. "Stop lying there. I heard the alarm clock. Get up, you lazybones." That's how her mother-in-law speaks to her, affectionately, warmly, and most importantly with deep respect. "I'm up now, Caroline." Lisa responded, "Thank you for reminding me." There was a tense silence outside the door. A second later, it exploded with a resentful cry. "Paul." As Lisa dressed, she heard Caroline complaining to her son in the kitchen. "Son, where did you find her? Such a rude girl. How much longer is she gonna be mean to me?" I tell her, "Lisa, honey, it's time to get up," and she tells me what? "Thanks for reminding me." Who is she after that? Talk to her. Explain that the husband's mother must be respected, or there will be no peace in the family. I will. Paul spoke with a full mouth. He was in a hurry to work, and therefore hoped to combine breakfast with listening to Mom's complaints. It was, predictably, not going well. Caroline couldn't stand it when anyone listened to her while she ate. She liked absolute attention. And the time of day and the needs of her listeners were in no way taken into account. Can you even put the spoon away when you're talking to Mom? You chew like you're not listening. No, I'm listening, but I can't put the spoon away, Mom. I have to go to work. Here we go. Sorry, Mommy, bye. Lisa entered the kitchen just at the moment when the mother-in-law, having seen her son off, sighed bitterly. He has no time to talk to his mother, so raise them, such ungrateful people. Feed, eat. Do not sleep through the night, all to them, and grow up, so they and listen to a native man is not willing. Maybe their mother needs something. Maybe it's her. When Caroline saw her daughter-in-law, she switched immediately. What a life you young people have. You lie in bed until dinner. But I remember getting up before dawn and run, go get water, splash yourself with ice water in the face, and like washed. Then prepare breakfast for everyone, wake them all up, sit them at the table, but you already grabbed something on the run, and that's enough from you. Yours are sitting sleepy munching porridge, and you're already standing at the mirror, painting your eyelashes. What have you got? A multi-cooker. And Caroline looked reproachfully at the device she hated, as if accusing it of the laziness and carelessness of today's youth. Lisa nodded with feigned understanding. Yes, that's right. My grandmother told me that all day long you only have time to spin around, but as long as I remember her, she was always so cheerful and well-groomed woman. Her hair was always done, makeup, and she had time to sew new dresses in the evenings. Caroline sighed, as if agreeing with her daughter-in-law's words, and Lisa was encouraged. Maybe at least this morning would be relatively calm. And here's the interesting thing, Lisa continued with inspiration. In the past, there seemed to be a lot of work to do, and everything at home was done by hand, and even diapers for children were not even available. But people were still somehow more cheerful, more energetic. It was an attempt to extinguish another outbreak of irritation, but mother-in-law was not so easy to spend. You are young people and would take an example from us, because you are all too good at talking. At revenge, it's not like a bag of sacks. Somebody who understands. Lisa didn't listen. She wanted to eat breakfast, but she had to take a plate and a spoon. And she didn't want Caroline to see how uncertain her movements had become. Her mother-in-law had long ago noticed that Lisa's vision had become worse, but she had not yet realized the extent of the impending disaster. Why don't you sit down to eat? Caroline suddenly asked. Do you have plenty of time to sit around? A carload. Lisa smiled. I have a vacation from today. She was glad she couldn't see the expression on her mother-in-law's face, but her tone was already expressive. Oh, Caroline wailed, retiring to her room. What kind of young people are these? A vacation, a weekend. Idle, insolent, lazy. Now the whole vacation will lie on their backs. She should work and not complain. She's on vacation. She finally slammed the door of her own bedroom, and Lisa knew exactly what would follow. Her mother-in-law would lie down on her wide double bed, make herself comfortable, that is, with pillows, and pull out a huge plate full of candy and cookies from under the bed. She'll chew and watch TV. Her favorite show was about to start, an hour and a half of happiness and a chance to eat breakfast in peace. Lisa gulped down her oatmeal, unable to taste it. Today she had to go to the city to see an ophthalmologist. At the local polyclinic, they couldn't tell her anything good, but they scared her half to death. The ophthalmologist turned out to be a formidable man with a large bald head and a sleepy face. He listened to Lisa's complaints about her rapidly deteriorating eyesight, absent-mindedly, yawning and grunting. When she stopped talking, he stared at her as if he'd just noticed she was here. So what are you complaining about? He asked. My eyesight, Lisa repeated patiently. I've been seeing a lot worse in the last 2 months, and it's getting worse and worse. Do you watch a lot of television? Not at all. I see. In a dull voice, the doctor said. So you're on the phone all the time, which is very, very busy. He yawned. Unhealthy. All right, well, what am I supposed to do now? Maybe some drops or glasses? Tell me, will I buy whatever I need? Eat plenty of blueberries. That's what he said. And glasses. Well, if you insist, sit here. Let's have a look. The chart gave shocking results. Lisa's eyesight was not just bad, it was terrible. The sleepy look on the ophthalmologist's face vanished. How do you even see anything? How do you walk on the road? You could get hit by a car. How? When did it start? 2 months ago, I told you. Was everything okay before that? Your eyesight was good. Yes, Lisa answered with a shrug. At least I didn't complain. Maybe not perfect vision, but good. The doctor was jotting something down in the medical chart. Think back. Have you fallen recently? Maybe, huh? Maybe you were pushed on the bus? Maybe hit your head on something. Any accidents? No, nothing like that. Strange, but anyway here. He handed her a thickly written piece of paper. I've written you a referral to the Institute of Ophthalmology. You'll have to go to the city. Here. He waved his hands guiltily. But you're a doctor, aren't you? Can't you do anything at all? At least diagnose? We don't have the appropriate equipment here, and the level of specialists you need is not the same. Go to the city. And don't delay. Time is of the essence. Is it serious? She asked. You just tell me the truth. Is it that serious? I don't know, the doctor answered honestly. I can't tell you anything for sure. It happened 2 weeks ago, and for 2 weeks Lisa lived in agonizing anxiety. Her eyesight, as if someone had jinxed her, was deteriorating more and more each day. She tried to calm down and keep a cool head, but it was too hard. One late evening, lying in bed, she couldn't stand it and burst into tears and told everything to her husband. But Paul, listening to his wife's confused and nervous story, only laughed and patted Lisa on the shoulder like a frightened child. Don't get upset over nothing, Lisa. Soon you'll have a vacation, then you can go to the city, to that eye institute of theirs. I'll tell you it's just eye fatigue. You should probably read less. That's what. And you're always with textbooks, dictionaries, notebooks. That's how you hurt your eyesight. Teachers often wear glasses. For some reason, Lisa felt offended, although she knew perfectly well that her husband just wanted to calm her down. But it turned out as if he didn't consider her problem worthy of attention. No, she reassured herself. Nothing offensive had happened. He, on the contrary, wanted to distract me, that Paul character does not know, and he is always like that, from the problems dismisses. And maybe he's right. Don't tell your mom, Lisa asked. She doesn't like me, and if she finds out, she'll kill me. I won't, promised her husband, and after thinking about it, added, but you shouldn't talk about Mom like that. She's not such a monster. Paul again stroked his wife's round shoulder and turned over on his side. He could not sleep. He felt bad for his mother, though he knew better than others that her character was not sugary, but still he pitied her and tried to make her life a little happier. What did she see, Mother? She finished 9 grades, and in the 3rd year of technical school was already with a belly. Paul's father didn't think about marriage, but his parents insisted. But they didn't care about their grandson. They cared about getting a free housekeeper. Caroline for their generosity, for the fact that Paul grandson recognized from morning to night the whole house washed. She worked in the vegetable garden, cooked for the whole family, but no one was going to feed her for free. She was assigned to the local school librarian, half a day's work, and the money drops. Salary, however, all to a cent, father-in-law took away. Maybe Caroline would not have lived to her years if after retirement her parents-in-law did not move to the south, to their eldest son far away. They left the house to the younger one, of course, with strict instructions. In his house, be the master, do not give a woman a free hand. She has brains like a chicken. And my father strictly followed this rule, tyrannizing his uncomplaining wife. It was said that he cheated on her often, and as if he made one more son on the side, but Paul did not know anything reliably, and his mother did not want to find out. And only after burying her husband, who fell off the roof on a great drunkenness, Caroline was able to straighten her back and take her eyes off the ground. Here, It would seem, and freedom to you, live and be happy. But here a new joy. The son brought his wife into the house. Mother hated her daughter-in-law from the very first minute, but the desire to separate and live separately resisted with tiger fury. Paul couldn't understand what it was all about, but in time he did. Caroline was taking revenge, taking out all her anger on Lisa, on her mother-in-law, on her husband, who obeyed them blindly in everything. At the fate that had treated her, Caroline, so unfairly. Unfair, and for that injustice, for all that she had been through, Paul pitied his mother. And Lisa, his dear wife, felt sorry for her too. Now she endures every day from her mother-in-law, both swearing and ridicule for his sake. If only he could make Lisa look at his mother with his own eyes. He persuaded, asked, explained, but the wife never felt compassion for her mother-in-law. And most of all, he felt sorry for himself. He swims between his women as between two fires, and there is no end to this tossing. Lisa was sobbing quietly on her pillow. "Don't cry, Lisa, it will be all right." Paul mumbled sleepily and immediately fell asleep, exhausted by his sad thoughts. In the Institute of Ophthalmology, where she came, clutching in her hand a referral for an examination, it was spacious, bright, and cool. In the first few seconds, Lisa, accustomed to small rural buildings, almost panicked when she found herself in the huge lobby. Her head was dizzy from the large space. How did they work here? They must be used to it. But soon enough the anxiety receded. At the reception desk, she was greeted with smiles, soft voices, and when she found out that her vision was too damn bad, she was taken by the hand to the right office. The doctor was kind and, not unlike his rural colleague, listened to Lisa very attentively, without distracting her and only occasionally asking clarifying questions. But now the panic began to return to her. "You see, Lisa," the doctor said thoughtfully, "this is something, well, completely unknown. I confess to you frankly, I've never encountered anything like this before." "No, I certainly haven't." "You've never encountered what?" she asked. "What is it? Is it some kind of rare disease? A virus, maybe?" He rubbed his chin grimly. "That's the thing, no. It's not a disease at all. I'd say by all accounts you're perfectly healthy. You should be able to see, but for some reason, and you yourself say it's getting worse." "Every day," Lisa confessed. "For example, yesterday I could recognize the pattern on the curtains 5 feet away from me, and today I can't. And I can't see the knobs on the dresser, but yesterday I could recognize them. Yes, it's just a wild mishap." "But what should I do, doctor?" she asked impatiently. "Give me something, some kind of treatment. Injections, drops, pills, ointments, treatments. Something should help." "Right? How is that possible? You saw a man, and then you went blind in the middle of nowhere. Do you believe that?" "I'm sorry, Lisa," the doctor replied tiredly, "but you see, to make an appointment, I need a specific diagnosis, and I don't have one. I can't. I have no right to prescribe you something stronger than ordinary vitamins, but they won't help in your case. You understand, don't you?" Her heart dropped. "And the prognosis?" In a shaky voice, Lisa asked. The doctor was silent. He remained silent for a long time, drumming his fingers on the table and not looking up at the patient. "Unfavorable, huh?" "Yes, tell me. At this rate of deterioration, you'll lose your sight within a week," he said quietly. "Try not to lose heart. Don't despair. You know, people live without sight and even manage to work. Do you really need eyes for your work? I work in a school, teaching literature. I see, I understand. then maybe you should think about changing your field. For example, you could try to learn massage techniques. You know, blind people make excellent masseurs. You know, when one sense organ fails, the others become more sensitive. That's why blind masseurs have magic hands. And he, it was very noticeable, had a hard time consoling. Lisa understood him and did not judge him. How do you cheer up a man who in a week will be an invalid? Thank you for the counseling, she said, standing up. I'll be going now, thank you. Wait, the doctor stopped her. You're a villager, aren't you? I don't really believe that myself, of course, but what? Look for your grandmother. You know, there are witch doctors in the villages. Why don't you ask around? Try her. Will it help? Lisa grinned. It was so strange to hear this from a certified ophthalmologist with a scientific degree. How can I put it, Lisa? I know cases when official medicine refused at a complete dead end, and semi-literate Bacchus coped. Why? Honestly, I don't know. Either they're closer to nature, or they really know the unknown. I don't know, Lisa, but you should try it. There's nothing to lose. I don't think it'll be any worse. Yes, she whispered. Really, there's nothing to lose. The doctors can't help. Lisa took the bus back, and for the first time she felt long and dreary on the way home. It was raining outside the window. The bus was moving slowly, bouncing on the bumps, and the passengers were peacefully dozing, waiting for their stops. Lisa didn't want to sleep at all. She thought bitterly about her life, and then she was transported by thoughts to her near future, when she would have to relearn the world and learn elementary things. How would she learn to put on makeup, write a message, cook a meal, and after all, how would she find out the prices at the store, count the cash, and check the change? That was going back in time, back to the days when their pollen love had just begun to blossom. Was there love? Maybe it had just dulled to someone who had given her a drop of heart and kindness. I wonder if she would have refused to marry him then, stayed in the city, continued to rent her one-room apartment? Of course, we can say that then Lisa would have been deprived of love and family happiness, but she would have been spared the need to move to the village, to endure the disgusting character of her mother-in-law, and would still meet on weekends with girlfriends, strolling along the brightly lit evening promenade, would brew herself a fragrant coffee and scratch behind the ears of her favorite cat. After moving into the house to Paul's mother, and the real coffee, brewed in a turbine, had to forget. Mother-in-law for some reason recognized exclusively instant drink, but seeing in Lisa's hands a copper turbine, read a whole lecture on the subject. Boiled coffee is for the bourgeoisie, and we ordinary people don't need such fiddles. In the end, she got so fed up with her lamentations that Lisa threw the cup away. Caroline was relieved, though not for long, and the cat had to be given to a friend. Lisa desperately missed her ginger bandit. She had picked him up as a tiny kitten, dirty and flea-ridden. And to give him hope for a happy new life, she named him Monsieur. You're going to be French, Lisa said, washing the squeaky lump in a basin of warm water. You will grow up serious, important, refined. Maybe you won't be handsome. I don't promise you that, but that's all right. But you will be the most charming. No one can resist you. And the kitten, as if accepting his mistress's prophecy as a guide to action, fulfilled it exactly. True, Monsieur called him not often. He was more willing to respond to music. But only in the new house he did not have to take him. On this occasion, Lisa was upset to the extreme. Mommy is terribly allergic to fur. The fault, Paul explained. Snot runs down her throat. She sneezes all the time. Isn't there somewhere you can put him? Good hands, of course. On the last day before we left, Lisa put music in his carrier and put his bowls and toys in his backpack. Don't worry, her friend urged her on. "He will settle in well with me. We will feed him, take care of him, love him, and in summer we will go for walks, of course on a leash." Lisa nodded sadly and smiled. She knew it was all true. The cat would be taken care of, but she couldn't forget the cat's eyes. He looked so shocked, as if he couldn't believe that his beloved owner had decided to leave him. At that time, Lisa thought she had no choice. She was so in love, and like every woman in love, she was ready to do anything crazy just to be near her prince. And now she was sadly asking herself, was it worth it? And the answer she had to give herself was not too cheerful. Paul's husband seems to be a nice, sweet, definitely a nice guy for whom nothing is dearer than peace and quiet in the family. He's so big and warm, you want to wrap yourself in him like a blanket and bask, bask, bask. Of course, he's a little bit ugly and completely devoid of ambition, strives for development, money, impressions. All this is not about him. And he is not a romantic. You can't look at the stars with him. He would rather lie down on a sofa and watch TV. Well, a hobby is a hobby, not worse than others, but he is constant, balanced, soft. So he cares for his mother in a touching way. He is a wonderful, devoted son, but at the same time, a bonus to Paul comes his precious mom, Caroline, who has no life without constant whining and complaining. Instead of her favorite exciting job, trips to conferences, participation in contests, Lisa now has a half-time job at a school that will close not today so tomorrow, because there are almost no kids. City friends remained in city life. They called each other less and less often, and during Lisa's infrequent visits to the city, they could not get together. One day, Lisa decided to see if her friends were in touch with each other. In the old days, they used to meet every Saturday at their favorite cafe to have breakfast and discuss the news of the week. Lisa arrived in town on a Saturday morning and went to a familiar cafe, but sat far away from the entrance at the farthest table. Half an hour later, the first friend walked through the door. She was usually a little late, but today she turned out to be an early bird. Two others pulled up after her. At their table there were bursts of happy laughter. Lisa had once sat there and laughed carefree and with them, but now the sight was painful. So their company hadn't abandoned their traditions. It was just that Lisa had become uninteresting to them. And instead of a cozy apartment, morning fragrant coffee and a cat, instant nonsense and an allergy to wool. It's called finding love but losing yourself. Sad. And it seems like it would be even sadder. And maybe if she'd stayed in the city and her eyes would have stayed intact, who knows? From the bus stop to the house, Lisa walked slowly, trying her best to see and memorize the countryside before it was forever hidden under the black blanket of her blindness. It would be something to remember. Caroline was already curious about her daughter-in-law's whereabouts, and of course, met Lisa on the doorstep. Complaints, resentments, and reproaches, which instantly sprang from the horn of plenty. "Lisa, where is your conscience? You didn't have time to go on vacation, so you ran to the city to go to your friends to gather gossip. Why don't you stay at home, like a normal wife, and help me with the garden? Why don't you mop the floors like you don't know I can't bend my back? I'll wash them later. I'll just rest a little after the road." That's her whole story. So, as to have fun, so she runs, and as to clean up the house, so it's later. What's Paul going to say? Have you thought about that? So he goes to work and his wife goes out for a walk? You could have cooked for your husband if you had nothing to do. I cooked it yesterday. Lisa replied tiredly, unceremoniously pushing past her mother-in-law into the house. There's soup and a roast. How can a good hostess feed a man with yesterday's dinner? Caroline almost howled. She really did not like such a calm, almost indifferent reaction of her daughter-in-law, and she intended by all means to get a good squabble. "I saw your soup and roast yesterday, and I almost felt sick. Who cooks like that, Lisa? You chopped up everything in a pot, just chunks of it." "What? Not neat. Did you chop the potatoes with an axe? It's sickening. Don't look." And how not to look if Paul is sitting in the kitchen, poor tortured, eating, and he has eyes like a beaten dog? A wife. He told me it was delicious. Here I am, for example, I've lived 30 years with my husband and never once fed him yesterday, every day cooked anew, so that everything was fresh and baked goods every day. Every day is bad for him. And I wasn't lazy like you. You married, so be kind, be a great hostess, so that everything was cooked and that everything at home was clean, or else look, your husband will find another one. The one who will feed him and wash a fresh shirt, he will cook for the morning, will not be lazy. He wears t-shirts. Don't you talk back to me. You better listen to what your mother-in-law tells you, not what she says. Give me a deadline and you'll see for yourself. I won't. Lisa mumbled, "I won't see anything." What? Speak louder. I have ears, not radios. You're mumbling, whispering. Haven't they taught you to speak properly? "I'm tired," I said. Lisa said loudly, turning to her mother-in-law. Caroline's face was blurring into one solid pale blur, and Lisa was glad for the first time that she was losing her sight. At least she wouldn't have to watch Caroline's facial expressions play. It's not a pleasant sight, especially when you know you're about to hear something nasty. "I'm gonna get some sleep, okay?" "Sleep? You're no use anyway." The mother-in-law sighed and went to the kitchen. Lisa, left alone in the room, quietly shut the door and sat on the bed without undressing. She was exhausted from the trip or from the bad news. Through the wall she could hear her mother-in-law muttering unhappily. It was hard to make out the words, but in Caroline's case, the general meaning was clear. It was always the same. "I wonder why I put up with the daily backstabbing and downright rudeness from this feisty old woman. No, I've learned not to be annoyed. I've even learned to ignore it, but why should I? All for the love of my husband? I suppose so. Does he love me? Maybe if he did, he wouldn't make me put up with this daily nonsense." Lisa was disgusted by her own thoughts. She'd never doubted Paul's love before. But before I wasn't in danger of being left blind and helpless, completely dependent on my husband and his blood-sucking mother. Before it, even if I did not realize it, but I was still sure that if a knife to my throat would come to me, I would leave everything here, get divorced, and survive perfectly well on my own. But now what? If Caroline won't let me go without a lecture now, what will happen when I go blind? Lisa stretched out on the bed and suddenly realized how tired she was. There was the long journey to the city and back, the doctor's disappointing prognosis, and the thoughts that were monstrous in their clarity. I'll think about it, but first I'll get some rest." She covered her eyes and fell asleep almost immediately. Her first thought upon awakening was, how could it be? After all, the doctor said there was still a week to go. The whole room was plunged into darkness, but turning her head, Lisa calmed down and even laughed at her fright. It had just gotten dark while she slept, with a young moon shining through the darkened window. What time was it? And why wasn't Paul back yet? He said he was only working half a day today, and already. Lisa looked at the screen of her phone. 12:30 and no message from her husband. She tried calling, but Paul's phone was off. Lisa, without letting the phone out of her hands, quickly went to the kitchen. Caroline must be awake. She could never get to sleep before 3:30 in the morning. Her mother-in-law was drinking tea. When she saw her daughter-in-law, she let out a long sigh. "Oh, oh, the queen is awake. Why did you work so hard that you fell asleep in the middle of the day? Did you carry sacks of potatoes?" "Maybe." "Caroline." Lisa ignored her mother-in-law's greeting. "Paul's phone's off. I'm worried. Did he call you to say he's late?" "No, he didn't." The mother-in-law answered calmly and took a sip of her drink. "And you're not worried?" "Me?" Caroline's voice was surprised. "Why should I? You're the one who sleeps on your back legs. You don't think about your husband, and I know where my son is." "Then where is he?" Lisa asked, barely containing herself. Caroline did not answer at once. She waited and waited and waited for her spectacular pause and carefully rustled something paper. "Probably a candy wrapper." "And you sit down," she said at last. "Sit down, Lisa. There's no truth in feet. Let's talk to you one last time." "One last time. What's she doing again? Is she going to die?" Lisa, in order not to cause another outburst of pathetic babble, obediently sank down on the chair. The mother-in-law kept rustling her fanatic. "I always knew you were a fool." Caroline stretched out. "And the main thing on Paul will not be offended that such a one chose. I taught him how to marry, son." I said, "So take the one that is dumber will be. From the smart is of little use. They are created for other things. For their universities, for scientific husbands. But you, a country boy, need a wife to obey you and take care of your family and children." "Yes, that's how I taught him." "So he chose you for a fool, but he was wrong. There's no such thing as stupidity. You should have taken a woman who's happy to take care of the house, who's happy to take care of her husband and his mother. My Paul married wrongly. He should not have chosen you." "Where is Paul?" Lisa asked in an icy voice. "You know where he is, don't you?" The wrapper rustled again. "You're just pretending that everything is fine. You think I'm out of my mind? You think I don't know you can barely see now?" I know. It's been a week since I switched your mug with another one, and you don't even know it. I know you went to the doctor today and not your friend, so what good did they say? What's that got to do with it?" Lisa was indignant. "I was asking about Paul. What's that got to do with my eyesight? What does it have to do with your eyesight?" The mother-in-law grinned. "You've got a certificate with signatures and a stamp, and what does it say?" "That you'll be blind soon." "Why?" Lisa asked, slowly getting up. "Were you going through my things?" Only now she realized that Caroline had not been rummaging through Caroline's things, but the doctor's report, which she had brought in her bag and left in the hallway, hanging it on a hook and forgetting about it. Even after living with Caroline for 2 crazy years, Lisa had never imagined that her mother-in-law could rummage through other people's things, and her mother-in-law, meanwhile, had brazenly got into her bag and was not even ashamed to admit it. "Who gave you permission to do that?" "And I do not ask permission from anyone. I am in my house myself, mistress. So I'll tell you something, my lovely daughter-in-law. Paul found someone else a long time ago, and he told me everything honestly, and now he's with her." "I didn't dare to tell you. I kept saying I felt sorry for Lisa. She loves me. And now I'll tell you, not him. A wretch like you can only live out his life in a stable." "In a stable, Lisa, not in a decent home. So get out of our house, Paul, and don't bother my eyes. Go now while I ask you to, and if you don't, beware." "Why should I beware?" Lisa asked with a grin. "Not you. Not me." The mother-in-law smiled venomously. "You should be afraid of your infirmity, not of me, because you are blind. What if you mistake coffee for poison? Oh, what shall we do then? Her face became serious. Without any mocking intonation, Caroline said very firmly, "Go away, Lisa. Go today now. Paul will come back, and I'll tell him you left him. I'll tell him that she's gone back to town, to her dissolute friends." "Damn you!" Lisa's voice broke out. "You have no shame, no conscience, that's all right, but no heart. Do you think he'll forgive you? You want to decide everything for your son, to control his fate like a toy." I wanted to. My mother-in-law readily agreed, and decided. My son, that's for me to decide. And remember, my dear, no one but a mother can know what's good for her son. You don't have any children of your own to talk to. Well, you better go pack your things, or Paul will probably be back soon. "Choke on my stuff," Lisa shouted. She ran out into the hallway and grabbed her bag from the hook. "Give it to your new daughter-in-law. It'll be cheaper," she added, and kicked open the door and left the house. Her first impulse was to stay here and wait for her husband to return. Let him look her in the eye, let him confess everything, or let him finally see what his mother was doing. But after a few seconds, Lisa realized that she would have to give up on this plan. She'd have to give it up so she wouldn't cry later. Let's say she stays here. Let's say she waits for Paul. And then what? That's what she's gonna tell him. "You know, Paul, your mom told me to get out of the house and told me that you have another woman." Very distinctly, clearly, as in a picture, she imagined her husband first lowering his thick, bushy eyebrows in surprise, and then shaking his head, disapprovingly, as if to say, "It's not good, as it turns out." And she already realizing that Caroline was not lying, she will still stand there and look at her husband with a bad, desperate hope. For what? Well, he'll say, "Since you know everything now, I've been thinking how to tell you myself. It's a pity, of course, that my mother beat me to it, but don't take offense at me, okay? This is life, not a fairy tale, not a movie. It happens a lot. You're good, kind, fair, but we don't fit together, and it's nobody's fault, I'm sorry." And his face will be so guilty and kind that she is likely to cry, and then for a long, long time cannot forgive himself and him this humiliation. And if there is no mistress, then what? He will go to his mother, and she, of course, will lie that she did not say anything like that, and could not have said anything like that, because Lisa is like a daughter to her. And whichever of them Paul believed, Lisa would still feel bad. Paul will start to persuade his mother not to quarrel, because they live in the same house, because Mom can't be left alone, and because her character is already formed, you can't change it. Well, and other nonsense, which, if you look at it in theory, light and not so stupid, but only to real life, it is not always adapted. Because theory is one thing, but practice is quite another. And then Lisa will have to return to this house, and she will not be able to forgive herself for such a humiliation for a long, long time. I've been having a lot of luck with stalemates lately. Lisa knew perfectly well that her mother-in-law was lurking like a mouse behind the curtain at the kitchen window, watching where her daughter-in-law would go. Will she sit on the doorstep like a dog or knock on the door and ask to go home? No, enough of this nightmare. She'll go back to town immediately. She'll wait until morning, and then she'll be there. Lisa looked in her purse just in case. It was a pity, of course, that the doctor's report had been left in Caroline's thieving clutches, but it was no big deal. The Institute should still have a copy. Everything is written on computer databases, not in the Middle Ages. We live in the 21st century, the time of high technology. There was still some cash, a bank card, and a passport in her purse, but having turned the bag over several times, Lisa realized with horror that both were gone. The bank card was still there, but it had been cut in half, and now the two unequal halves were lying at the bottom of the bag, scratching the silk lining with their sharp edges. Oh, Caroline, the most practical woman in the world, who could just kick her daughter-in-law out of the house, had to rip her off too. Well, to hell with her. After all, the phone with all the necessary applications is right here. All that remained was to decide on a place to stay. The first bus into town leaves at 6:30 in the morning. Where would she go until then? Knock on the neighbor's door, but they would let her in. There's nothing to talk about, but they would start asking questions, and she couldn't answer them now, and the whole village would be talking about it the next day. I'll sleep at school tonight, Lisa decided. Of course, it was summer and night, but the watchman should be there. He would let her in for sure. She didn't want to explain to the watchman, whose name was Bob, the reason for her night appearance, but on the other hand, she wouldn't sleep at the bus stop. And Bob had little interest in gossip. He had only one interest in this life: alcohol. As the summer twilight began to lighten, the school looked intimidating. Inappropriate among log cabins, an angular brick building with a broken window on the first floor, it was before the vacations. The children were playing soccer in the schoolyard. Well, the ball flew there. It looked like an abandoned building, the kind of building that photographers love and teenagers find romantic. Lisa herself used to love to climb such places. What could she find there? Treasure? No, everything was much more ordinary, just wanted to tickle her nerves. She ended up with a broken collarbone and a sprain. Lisa knocked on the locked front door. Bob, she called out. Open up, it's Lisa, let me in. But nothing was heard behind the door, no footsteps, not even a rustle. Bob, silence again. I see. The watchman had managed to use his main interest in life, and now he would not wake up at least from the cannon of the fields. Lisa sat down on the steps of the school and stared at herself with an unseeing gaze. She was alone outdoors at night after all. Amazing. She thought wistfully about the fact that, despite the 2 years she had spent in the village, she had never made any close friends here. And when? From work to home, from home to work, husband, house, vegetable garden, Caroline, were to make friends when? Of course, she could call her friends in the city, ask them to come and pick her up, but for some reason she was ashamed to think about it. Lisa didn't like to think about it, but even now no memory was pleasant enough. All seemed trifling compared to the present trouble. After Lisa found out that her friends were still dating, she called each of them, and they all talked something like this. Sorry, Lisa, but that's life. You've fallen out of our circle, and we have nothing to talk about. What are your interests now? How do you make cheesecakes? How to get rid of parasites in your garden? You won't be interested in us. We won't be interested in you. It was unpleasant, hurtful, but at the same time, Lisa felt something like relief. At least now she wouldn't have to wonder what had happened. The only reliable companion she still had was Kevin, and it was his number she dialed. He arrived quickly and didn't even seem surprised by her call. He listened, said, "Wait, I'm on my way." And that was it. Kevin, he had always been like that, reliable and dependable, and Lisa felt a little calmer at the thought that she was not alone in this rapidly fading world. Someone cared about her. Someone was rushing in a car to pick her up in the middle of the night from the deserted steps of the school porch. Someone cared. He got out of the car with such a cheerful smile, as if he hadn't come to rescue his friend from trouble, but was going to a party. Hello, lost one. He smiled, helping Lisa up the steps. It's a little late for a ride. Come on, let's get in the car. Where's your stuff? Here. Lisa waved her purse. That's all my luggage. That's a lot. Kevin even whistled in surprise. Lisa shrugged. Look, why don't we pick up the rest? I'll go with you if I have to. Do I have to? No, she wrinkled her nose. I don't have to. Believe me, it's disgusting. That mother-in-law was there, touching my stuff. And the husband what? Kevin asked quietly. The husband ate a lot of pears. Lisa cut him off. No, I don't have a husband anymore. Shall we get out of here? She started toward the car, but stopped. Why did you stop so far away? The headlights are on. It's about 100 meters away. Kevin silently took her hand. Come on, the car is just a few steps away. What's wrong with you? Have you been drinking? No, she didn't answer. I have trouble with my eyes. I'll tell you everything on the way, but let's go quickly. I can't stand being here anymore. I'm sick of it. If Kevin had any more questions, he nobly suppressed the impulse to ask them immediately, and Lisa was grateful for his silence. He drove along the highway leading into town, watching the road carefully, and then Lisa slowly, stopping now and then, began to tell. And she herself was surprised at how much she had to tell about her mother-in-law who wouldn't let her pass, and about her husband who didn't seem to notice how unbearable the atmosphere at home was. She talked about how terrible it was to lose her eyesight and to know that soon you would be completely blind, and about how her friends didn't want to talk to her anymore, and about how she missed her cat, and about her old life in general. Kevin listened to her without interrupting, letting her talk. Lisa talked, and when she ran out of words, tears came. So they say, to look for a witch doctor, he said at last. Kevin had brought Lisa straight to his house, and now they were sitting in his cramped kitchen drinking very hot and sweet tea. They do, she confirmed. You know, all sorts of grandmothers, forest witches. They say there are more of them, but there were none in the village where I lived. Well, except there's one who works at the forge and cures infertility. If a woman comes to him at the forge, he does some magic, and 9 months later she has a baby. Kevin laughed. He laughed so long and contagiously that Lisa joined him. Good for you. At last Kevin said, wiping away his tears, Oh, well done. You can see at a glance that it's a strong sorcery. Tell me, does he take money for the treatment? No. Lisa laughed again. He says that for such a fee you cannot take, or you will not be able to heal. And they laughed again. Kevin had brought her back to life, even if unwittingly. At least she was herself again for the first time in months. Not the deathly frightened, almost blind Lisa, but the other Lisa she used to be. Calm, fun-loving, and laughing out loud. For a second, it even seemed to her that she had gone back a few years, and a lazy, lazy music was about to enter the kitchen. Her nostrils would smell the subtle aroma of fresh coffee and Paul. There was no Paul. There was no Paul. She tried to see Kevin's face, but nothing came out, just a speck of light and a cloud of red hair. No, there's no going back in time. It was just a dream. I'm probably gonna have to retrain now, said Lisa. I'll have to make money somehow. The doctor said blind people make good masseurs. It's good that you're making plans. Kevin approved, but don't rush into it yet. Maybe you'll come up with something. What's there to figure out? The doctors have given up on me. We'll see, he said meaningfully. Now go to sleep. The time is already 4:30 in the morning, and you and I have arranged a meeting. We'll put you on my bed, and I'll sleep on the sofa in the living room. Lisa did not object. Lying in bed, she was surprised to realize that she did not regret what had happened. On the contrary, it was as if a stone had fallen from her soul, so easily and freely. It even felt like her eyesight had returned a little, but it was just a feeling, wasn't it? Lisa, Kevin called to her softly from the living room. "Not cold out there." "Here we go," she laughed. "Stupid." Kevin was not indebted to her. "I was going to get you a second blanket, if you need one. Or you can get it yourself, in the closet on the right." Lisa laughed softly. She was a fool to think that Kevin was hitting on her for old times' sake. "No, I'm not cold." She smiled, burying her face in the pillow. "Thanks, Kevin." Meanwhile, Caroline was in the kitchen, stroking the arm of the sad Paul. "I guessed it a long time ago," she said sympathetically to her son. "You just did not want to tell you. All thought that I'm an old fool in these matters, understand, and it's how it turned out. So maybe she did not go to her lover?" Paul asked me sadly. "So just offended by something. She told me recently, 2 weeks ago, that she began to see badly. Crying, afraid that completely blind, and I told her, by the way, carelessly so, that come on, it's all nonsense, you read a lot." "Nothing." Her mother waved it off. "Now her what's his name, he will comfort her. What if she has no one after all?" Paul said again, his voice ringing with desperate hope. Caroline drew a crumpled handkerchief from the neckline of her blouse and held it to her eyes. "What do you mean there's no one?" she sobbed. "If she told me herself." "Here, my son, she was sitting there, so brazen, so glossy, and she told me." "Keep all my things, give them to the new Paul fool." "She said that?" he asked in confusion. "Yes, sonny. And also says, and me my favorite, new everything will buy new, yes, such that you and in a dream never dreamed." So she left, grabbed her bag from the wall and left the house. Paul put his hands around his head. How could it be? His whisper was quiet, as if he had forgotten his mother's presence and was addressing himself. "How can it be, Lisa?" Caroline sighed, then rose heavily from her chair. "Son, I'm going to bed. My strength is gone. I'm aching for you." On the table, misplaced and lonely, stood a vase with a bouquet of small bush roses. Paul had brought them from the city for his wife. In the morning, waking up on a wide bed in an unfamiliar room, Lisa didn't immediately realize where she was, but then her fully awake brain began to plant a memory of yesterday. She remembered how she'd sat on the school porch, how Kevin had come to pick her up, and then she felt a burning sense of shame that she'd never once called him during her 2 years of marriage, never asked him how he was doing. And he said, "Call, don't disappear," but where was it? He only sent congratulatory messages twice a year on holidays. Christmas and her birthday, and when she had a problem, Kevin came at night. A friend. With some difficulty, Lisa managed to check the missed calls on her phone. None. All the better. After last night's story, Lisa didn't feel like talking to her husband. And about what? The impending divorce? They have no children, nothing to divide. Paul will be subpoenaed. No other topics of conversation, none. Since there was nothing to do, Lisa decided to spend the day thinking about the future. The option was to move back to her parents in their tiny backwoods town. That was the first thing that came to mind, but Lisa wasn't going to be a burden to them. In the evening, she would ask Kevin for help to find some massage courses. Then she would get a new profession, and when she arrived at her parents' house, she could get a job. Her parents would be able to help her adapt to her new life a little. This thought cheered her up, and Lisa decided to start adjusting now. She got out of bed and, closing her eyes, groping along the walls, walked around one room after another. At first, she was a little afraid to move blindly, but as the doctor had promised, the sensitivity of her other perceptual organs had sharpened for lack of sight. Lisa noticed that she could distinguish the textures of stone, wood, plaster walls, metal faucets better than before. She liked the kitchen table the best. It was real wood and was pleasantly warm. Leaning lower over the countertop, Lisa could catch the faint, muted smell of varnish, the scent of pine forest. She was immediately reminded of her childhood, of her reluctance to go into the woods with her parents. She remembered so clearly the odors of pine needles, the resin that froze in viscous drops on the cones, the fire, that for a brief moment she was able to feel it right here in the kitchen of the city apartment. Then she began to relearn the telephone. First of all, she should forget about manual typing. Only voice typing for now. Lisa tried recording a few voice messages to herself and was generally satisfied. Her voice in the recording was very pleasant. The next task she came up with for herself was to try and carefully make her bed without opening her eyes. The biggest challenge was the bedspread. When Lisa didn't try, and she couldn't get it straightened properly, one corner hanging down the other. Desperate to cope with such a difficult task, Lisa tried simply folding the blanket, corner to corner, but she encountered many obstacles along the way. "I'll learn anyway." Stubbornly, she gritted her teeth as she fought with the blanket. The whole day flew by in such simple, but now newly challenging tasks. In the evening, Kevin didn't come home alone. "Meet Lisa. This is my grandmother, Vanessa." "Hello." Lisa said hello. She couldn't see who she was addressing. Her eyesight wasn't worse today, thank God, but it wasn't better either. She still saw only vague outlines of objects, but she was glad of it. Judging by the size of the outlines, Kevin's grandmother was a tall and full elderly woman. "My name is Lisa. Grandma Vanessa." She heard a cheerful female voice. "You sit, don't get up." "Kevin?" "What, Grandma?" "Get out of here, stay in your room until I call you." Lisa bit her lip. She felt that Kevin had brought her grandmother for a reason, and it made her feel very insecure. When she heard her friend's footsteps receding, she smiled at the big blur named Grandma Vanessa. "Would you like some tea?" "I'll pour some," Sadie said. A strong hand lay on her shoulder and pushed Lisa back into the chair. "Sit down and be quiet. I need to look at you." Lisa obediently remained silent. The hand that nailed her to the chair smelled of herbs. There was peppermint and a subtle note of lavender and some other almost indistinguishable but very pleasant odor. Baba Vanessa did not utter a sound. She took her hand off her shoulder but didn't move a step away from her. She was probably looking at her. Lisa remembered that a long time ago, Kevin had said that his grandmother was a real forest herbalist and that everyone went to her for treatment, even injured animals who tried to crawl to Vanessa's door, and she nursed them all back to health, no matter if they were human or animal. Then Lisa let the story pass her ears, even thought that Kevin had made up such a colorful relative. It turned out that Kevin had not made it up. He had told the truth, and she had been a fool not to believe it. It was very uncomfortable to sit like that, not moving and not opening her mouth. But in a few seconds, Lisa felt a slight warmth on her face, as if someone's invisible, but obviously kind, caring hands touched her temples. Obedient to this pleasant warmth, she closed her eyes, and tiny golden sparks immediately flashed under her eyelids. "Sit, sit, sit." Vanessa murmured and put her palm on the back of Lisa's head. "Sit still. I'll look at it again." Lisa did not move. "I see. Everything is with you, girl." Vanessa spoke softly and shouted in a strong, loud voice. "Kevin, come here. It's okay." "Here I am, Grandma. I have a bottle of water in my bag. Take it out. You will wipe her eyes with it every night. And when the water runs out, she'll see." "That's it?" Kevin was confused. "You don't need anything else?" "Yes." Vanessa laughed. "At least give me some tea. I'm thirsty." Kevin also laughed briefly. Lisa, your doctor was right. Medicine failed, but my grandmother did it easily. Grandma Vanessa. Lisa decided to speak up. What's wrong with me? The doctors couldn't diagnose me. And they won't. The herbalist answered. The spoil on you is strong. Doctors do not treat it. We can do it and do. And who? She couldn't see, but she could clearly imagine Vanessa shrugging her shoulders. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. Who put this spoil on you will soon stop seeing. As soon as you find out who of your acquaintances has gone blind, it means that it is him. Lisa felt uncomfortable with the lightness with which it was said. She squirmed in her chair and suggested, How about I rub my eyes for the first time right now? Let me help you. Kevin moistened a cotton pad with healing water and gently dabbed Lisa's eyes. Water and water. When she opened her eyes, nothing had changed. Is this really going to help? She asked Kevin as he walked her grandmother home. I think water is water. It will. Kevin said with conviction. Maybe not right away, though. As Lisa fell asleep, she tried to figure out if the living water would help. Would it save her from the oncoming blindness? She would have Kevin's confidence that it would help, and that was it. She didn't think so herself. The next morning, Lisa woke up and suddenly realized that she could make out a pattern on the bedclothes, multicolored polka dots, as if confetti had been scattered on the bed. What's that? She shrieked, touching the little colored spots with her fingers. Bare feet slapped quickly down the hallway, and Kevin's voice was suddenly very close by. What's wrong, Lisa? She looked up at him and smiled happily. Kevin, I can see the beginning. She remembered Kevin, red-haired, white-skinned, with open green eyes and a slight smile on his beautiful lips. I haven't seen you in so long, she said, not caring at all what she said. I loved you so much. Kevin remained silent. She must have embarrassed him with her thoughtless confession. I'll, he muttered, go to the kitchen, make coffee there. I remember cinnamon for you. Lisa was just as embarrassed. She shouldn't have told him that, but why not? She really loved him, so why couldn't she say it? Lisa remembered how a few years ago they had woken up together, and Kevin had gone to make them cinnamon coffee, just as he did now. His apartment had been smaller then, but it was big enough for her. Kevin would make coffee and whistle to himself, and Lisa would get up and follow him, because she loved to watch him barefoot in a sheet, making sure the boiling drink didn't escape. Lisa sat on a low stool and watched her lover. Silently she adored him, and it seemed there was no one in the world more perfect. How tall he seemed to Lisa, from her vantage point. How beautifully the sun played on his red hair. How easily, with what effortless grace did he move. Kevin, from time to time, turned around to smile at her. And certainly there was no other smile like it in the whole world. How much could be put into one smile? Lisa even squeezed her eyes shut to visualize it as clearly as possible. A turn of Kevin's head, just a slight turn, and already a fiery strand of hair falls carelessly on his high forehead. His green eyes flash with affectionate amusement. The corners of his lips lift. When you smile like that, Lisa once said, I feel like I've got an arrow in my heart. There's no room left. That's how much I love you. How long did their happy love last? Lisa couldn't remember. Maybe a few months, maybe a lifetime. How simple it had been then, simple and very real, and how stupidly it had ended. Lisa remembered that day, and now it all appeared to be a dream. Here she is standing in the airport, for some reason in Kevin's jacket, and from tears she can't see anything around her, but Kevin is still with her. Lisa presses herself against him, trying to breathe in his scent, to memorize the sensation of his soft curls on her face. I'll be back. I'll be back soon. Don't cry. When I get my father back on his feet, I'll be right back." Why? Why didn't she go with him then? Kevin's father had been in some terrible accident, and it took a long time to recover. Week after week, and then the weeks turned to months. Kevin called her every day, but there was nothing comforting to report. So far, things were still a little creaky. "I guess I'll have to stay a little longer." "Don't be mad. I miss you so much." And Lisa wasn't angry. How could she be angry with someone who was her whole world? But with each new day, it seemed to her that drop by drop, joy, fun, love were leaving her life. She was less and less interested in work, movies, hanging out with friends. Once at the very end of her vacation, just out of desperation, Lisa signed up for a one-day excursion and then promised herself never to do it again. The excursion was so boring that Lisa could hardly wait to get home. The quiet fall days dragged on, and Kevin never returned. Lisa tried to stay at work longer and even organized a literary club for high school students. It was a good idea, promising, but Lisa quickly lost interest in it, and everything that wasn't about Kevin. In the evenings, Lisa couldn't stay at home and spent hours wandering the autumn streets, buying herself a cup of coffee and forgetting to drink it, and when she remembered, it was already cold and she only had to send the cup with its contents to the nearest trash can. She was also uncomfortable among people, but the crowd was strangely soothing and gave her a sense of belonging. Your love may be far away from you, but you are not alone. Tired of walking the streets and looking at shop windows, Lisa sat down on some bench and looked endlessly at the sky, hoping that the sun would peek through the blue clouds for a second. But it seemed that the sun was carried away by her beloved in his hair. And then, when Lisa had given up all hope of seeing Kevin, Paul appeared. He noticed the lonely girl sitting on a bench on a windy evening and could not pass by. Her face was too desperate, like a frozen mask of longing. Lisa remembered well how Paul had persuaded her to go to a coffee shop, bought her some hot tea, made sure she drank it without waiting for it to get cold, and then walked her home. All the next week, when he came home from work, he would stop by to bring her cakes, give her a flower, or just sit with her in the kitchen. That cold fall, Paul warmed her with his simple, uncomplicated kindness. The calls from Kevin were beginning to annoy her. Lisa still loved him, longed for him, but suddenly it seemed that he was just stalling, and in fact his father was long gone, just like Kevin there, in the distant northern city. That's why he's in no hurry to come home. And maybe he has already got a girlfriend there. How, after all, a young and healthy man can endure so long without a woman's attention? Or did he even get married and say nothing? And Paul wasn't that appealing at all. Perhaps he wasn't even interesting. But he was there, always, invariably, for sure. Never asked for anything, but always ready to fulfill any request. And her heart, hungry for warmth, was drawn to him more and more. She promised him nothing, and he was willing to wait as long as it took. Not complaining, not resenting, not grumbling. The day Lisa had already packed all her things and was just waiting for Paul to move with him to the village, Kevin suddenly showed up, although the word "showed up" would be more appropriate. He came without a call, without a message, hoping to surprise his beloved, but the surprise was waiting for him. "I'm getting married." "Simple," she said. "I'm waiting for my fiancé to come and pick me up. I've already taken the cat in, and he's going to live with Kathy." Kevin nodded thoughtfully. Is that the tall girl, the black one?" "From your Saturday night club? She is." Lisa shivered as if from a gust of icy wind. The words, empty and indifferent, courteous, all of them seemed to fall through, like a coin in a piggy bank, rattling away, but nothing really important was said. And then Lisa made up her mind. "I'm sorry, Kevin," she said. "I really loved you and waited for you. But I didn't. You never came back and neither did I." "I couldn't come back sooner," he interrupted. "You know that." "Yes, I know, but I guess I was just tired, not of living, but just waiting and waiting and waiting. And when he came along, I realized I could live my life. My life, not just waiting for you to come back. Do you understand me?" Again, the same slow, thoughtful nod. "I understand. I guess I do. And you're not angry with me." "No, I hope everything works out well for you, Lisa. Call me, don't disappear. So much for that." She thought as she looked at his tall figure. He walked without noticing the cold, without slipping on frozen puddles, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders turned, his red hair branching and bouncing with every step he took. Lisa kept waiting for him to stop, to turn back, or at least stop to wave at her, to smile goodbye. Look back at me." But he didn't look back. 3 years later, "Kevin, I'm here," shouted a spectacular young woman standing at the entrance to the mall. A tall man, standing out in the crowd with the fiery color of his hair, hurried over to his friend. "I couldn't find a parking space," he said, smiling. "Did you miss me, Lisa?" "I always miss you," she replied and rose up on her tiptoes to kiss her lover. Passers-by looked at them with amusement. The times we live in are like a Formula One rally, the speed and the control of the situation. You don't see that kind of leisurely tenderness very often anymore. Shall we? Kevin took Lisa's hand and the two of them walked through the open doors. "We need to choose tiles for the bathroom," Lisa listed. "We also need to look for a comfortable sofa for the nursery. If the baby gets restless, we can at least rest next to the crib for a while." "Not in a hurry?" Kevin laughed. "We still have 7 months to go. And they'll fly by before you know it. And there'll be 3 of us already." Yes, they heard a voice behind them and turned around. Paul, already quite worn out and weighted up, was standing behind them and was fiddling with his phone. "Time flies by," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "Sometimes it seems to you that your wife left you only yesterday, and then, as you think about it, it's been 3 years. Lisa tensed slightly and instinctively covered her stomach with her palm. "I hope, Paul," she said, "that those 3 years have turned out to be very happy ones for you. I'm glad your mother told me everything. I was angry with her then, but now I realize it was for the best. You would have hesitated to go to your girlfriend and agonized, and I would have." Paul's face reflected bewilderment mixed with a fair amount of curiosity. "What are you saying?" "What girl? To whom I would not dare to go. How could you?" Lisa was confused. "Your mom told me so herself the night I left. Allegedly you have one. You were only going to work half a day that day, remember? I was waiting for you and your phone was off, so I went to ask your mom if she knew where you were. I was worried, you know. And your mom told me that you're with your mistress now, that you've been together for a long time, and you don't dare to leave because you feel sorry for me. I really do." Paul smiled sadly. "I was late because I had an accident. Not serious, no, it's nothing like that. I don't think I even had a scratch on me, but while all that was being processed, while I was looking for a car serviced, time passed." "I didn't know," Lisa gasped. "But why didn't you call me when you got home? At least we would have explained ourselves to each other like human beings." Paul looked away. "Mom said you left me on your own for a lover." Lisa looked at her ex-husband, speechless. "Yes, that's how it turned out," he said and smiled his kind bear smile. "Mom?" Lisa barely spoke. "Your mom should play chess, a strategist like they don't make anymore." Yeah, Paul agreed awkwardly. Kevin, who had been silent all this time, tactfully reminded himself. Lisa, I'll go and look at the tiles, and you two talk. I'll meet you in the cafeteria, okay? He's not offended. Paul asked. He won't be jealous. Lisa shook her head. No, we're too expensive for each other to be jealous. Kevin knows I'm nowhere near him now. She smiled, remembering the day she had her final epiphany. It was early morning, and Kevin was barefoot and wrapped in a sheet, making them coffee. Lisa tiptoed up behind him and, without thinking, hugged him. She shouldn't have thought about it, because then she would have gotten scared, hesitated, and never done what she'd been dreaming about for days. And standing there, no closer, her forehead against his back, she suddenly realized she was home. Kevin stood still on the floor, with a long coffee spoon in his hands, and seemed to have stopped breathing. You, he asked quietly, just don't let me go again, do you hear me? Don't ever let go. Never, she echoed. That morning, for the first time in Kevin's extensive practice, their coffee ran off. I'm happy for you, brought her back to the present by Paul's voice. Honestly, Lisa, I'm really glad you're doing well, that you love each other. That wouldn't have happened to me. I'm too much of the slumbering type, she grinned. Well, if only a little, Paul. No, I blame you. With a mom like mine, I should have decided to move, and I just kept stalling. Well, you were just taking care of her. Lisa objected. Paul thought for a moment. No, he said, I mean that too, but the main reason was something else. I just didn't want to change anything. I was comfortable, with my wife and mother around, and I didn't have to look for a new place to live, settle down, spend my time, energy, and money. It seemed to me that if I would humor and wiggle long enough, everything would somehow fall into place. It probably did, but we both, admittedly, envisioned it a little differently. Lisa finished. She looked at him almost fondly. After all, this simple, clumsy lout was not a bad man. There was no meanness or guile in him. The only thing that let him down was his excessive softness of character, which did not allow him to make a choice in time. He wanted too much to live in peace among his loved ones. And he did not take into account the fact that it was not always possible, but still he was a kindred man for her. And Lisa really wanted him to have his own puzzle of a happy life. And how is your mom? She asked, so as not to be silent. How's Caroline's health? Yes, not so good, Paul admitted reluctantly. You know, after you left, my mom suddenly started to lose her eyesight very fast. The doctors couldn't do anything. They just said it doesn't happen like that. And after a month, she went completely blind. Oh, Lisa burst out. Yes, but you know it changed her a lot. She gets along very well with my second wife. Praises her all the time, says how lucky she is to have a daughter-in-law. She keeps telling me how lucky I am to be married. I don't even recognize her sometimes, and on Sundays, she always asks me to take her to church. She prays a lot. I was even a little worried at first. How could a person change so drastically? I thought maybe she had something wrong with her head. But then I realized that everything's fine. It just happens. Can you believe it? Miracles. Lisa smiled. But I'm happy for you. Now I'm going to go. Paul, okay. My husband's waiting for me. Bye.
Subscribe and click the bell. They say you can't drink water on your face, but for Christina Finch it was a weak consolation. The girl did not shine with beauty and hated mirrors with all her soul. Hair of some unintelligible mouse color was not distinguished by emptiness. Small gray eyes, thin lips, wide potato-shaped nose. The sight of it all from the branch made me want to cry. She would not flinch, and the potatoes would not laugh Betty. The first beauty of the class knows with a good potato. But the boys giggled nastily, and Christina almost cried. But was it her fault she wasn't born as pretty as Betty? On the eve of prom night, the girls were just discussing outfits for their first adult prom, and Christina sighed quietly on the sidelines. Who cares what I wear? Doomedly thought she still will not become more beautiful. Potatoes, she asked Betty snidely. And Christina sighed. But here we go again. What's she going to say this time? Did you remember to buy a mask for graduation? The education department's gonna be there. Why scare them? The classmates burst out laughing, but Christina chose not to say anything. Actually, she was thinking of not going to the prom. To endure the ridicule on such a solemn day. Christina wasn't a masochist. She was looking forward to graduation, never to see her classmates again. Especially that arrogant Betty. More news splashed her mother. How is that interesting? Are you worse than the rest of them? To deprive yourself of such an important holiday? As if you do not understand then. The girl exclaimed bitterly. I'm as ugly as. Christina was silent, unable to come up with a comparison. And just waved my girl, but it's not about looks. Her mother tried to comfort her. But you're a smart girl and a good hostess. And what great essays do you write? It's good for you to say you're beautiful, and I'm me. Miranda, Christina's mother, was indeed an attractive woman. When she was young, she had dark hair and dark eyes. And a woman with a sweet figure broke more than one man's heart. But she chose Vovka Finch. He was not handsome, but reverently treated his then future wife, and knew how to make money. From him, Christina inherited such a prominent nose, and everything else except Christina and Finch. Theirs was the youngest son, David. Unlike his sister, the boy grew up real handsome like his mother. What a joke nature had made. What a joke, said the villagers. I wish Christina had taken after her mother. She's a girl, and it's enough for a boy to be prettier than a monkey. Christina, though she loved her little brother, sometimes she found herself envying him. What injustice indeed. After all, for a boy, beauty is really an attribute not necessary. The beautiful Miranda fell in love with him, not the handsome one, but kind and caring. But boys like Betty want a pretty girl. From time to time, Miranda urged her daughter to experiment with hairstyles and light makeup. Not for school, of course, but the girl only waved it off. But she didn't believe in a magical transformation, unless she got plastic surgery. It seems to be possible to do it from the age of 16, but with written parental consent. But where's the money coming from? Christina did go to the prom. Her parents bought her a dress from a soft pink background, and the graduation outfit sat on a slim girl's figure, as in a cast, and white shoes and a miniature handbag in tone perfectly complemented the festive image. What's the use? Tragic voice, said the graduate. You can't hide your face anyway. Miranda nodded. You don't have to, but you can make it more beautiful. Christina sighed heavily. I don't believe it, she muttered. Wanna bet? Smiled Miranda. Christina's godmother, Aunt Wendy, who worked as a hairdresser, gave her a cascade haircut and put into a chic ceremonial hairstyle the girl's hair, decorated with small nooks, and somehow magically turned from machines into ashes and daffodils. Oblique asymmetrical. Slightly bunched teacher distracted attention from the large nose, and light youth makeup refreshed and softened the features of the face. It wasn't me, Christina exclaimed in surprise. The girl looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't believe it was her. No, goddaughter, it's you. Aunt Wendy smiled. It's just like in a Cinderella fairy tale. First ball, a beautiful dress, and a fairy godmother. The only thing missing is the wicked stepmother carriage. Christina laughed merrily and said there's no need for a wicked stepmother. And there is no need for a carriage either. After a little thought, the girl with a sigh added, I'll turn into a pumpkin anyway. Christina, what a pessimism. Fairy godmother shook her head. You are entering adulthood, which is exciting in itself, and such a decadent mood. Wendy, for the better. You'll go off to study in the city. You'll have new friends and a new life, and everything will be different. And the carriage won't turn into a pumpkin. Wendy knew that her godmother was being made fun of at school and was very worried about it. Therefore, she sincerely wanted Christina to rub the nose of all the offenders. While Wendy was transforming her favorite, Miranda went for a manicure. When she came back to see her daughter, she couldn't believe her eyes. "And I always said you should experiment," Miranda said. At the prom, Christina made a splash. "I've always known that any girl can be a beauty." "Thank you." She smiled shyly, noticing Betty's disgruntled eyes. Of course she did. After all, she wasn't the center of attention. Christina had never liked school nights. All the girls would slow dance with the guys, and she would stand against the wall and pretend she didn't really want to. This night was different. Almost all the guys in the class invited Christina, except for the gym teacher and the computer teacher. "Christina, you look beautiful tonight." The latter complimented her. Parents looked at their daughter with pride and smiled, and Christina was sure that only good things were ahead of her. Such a beginning of adult life, she liked it very much. Morning, the end of August, a marshraka and a heavy bag in her hands. So begins the school year of a student living in a dormitory. "I guess you're going to study?" Christina asked, a grandmother of a noble appearance, sitting next to her. "Yes," nodded the girl. "And what will you be?" "Philologist." She smiled. "What kind of beast is that?" Squinted his grandmother, but hesitated. How to explain more lucidly to the elderly passenger? "Who is a philologist?" "It's a person who studies the history of languages." "Well, after graduating from uni, I can teach Russian language and literature at school, and I can work in a publishing house." Respectfully stretched grandmother. "Well then, study. Just look, no temptation to succumb to any temptations, because there are such sprouts who go to study." And the old woman looked meaningfully at Christina, and she almost giggled. In general, personal life is not an obstacle to study, if, of course, do not lose your head. But how can you explain it to the older generation? "I'll tell you so edifying," said the old woman. "A decent girl will not go by the hand and will definitely wait for her soulmate." "Deal." With bitter irony, thought Christina, "but I with my looks, it is definitely not threatened." In the words of grandmother, something else broadcasts something about the consequences of relationships with guys before marriage. But Christina listened with half an ear. In fact, in the last days before the departure, she thought not only about how she would study. The girl imagined how she would meet a guy and they would start dating. And one day the guy would say he loves her. Dream on and dream on. I injected myself with Christina. Have you seen yourself in the mirror lately? For a guy to want to meet you, you need to pay attention, and they only look at the beautiful ones. Actually, it wasn't that sad. The sensation she made at the prom greatly encouraged her, and Christina finally took charge of her appearance. The morning after the first adult prom, the girl unraveled her hair in front of the mirror and was amazed to realize the cascade. Her haircut, not thick hair, has gained volume. Their color became more interesting, but most importantly, the nose visually reduced. Wow, Christina shared this metamorphosis. Aunt Wendy is a miracle worker. And why didn't I listen to my mom? The dark blue jeans and beige coat were not new, but combined with the new hair and makeup in soft colors, they looked new. And yet Christina didn't feel confident in herself. Oh, and then there's that grandma. Stopping this thought, the girl wanted to say something nice to her, but the grandmother had to go out. But the old woman smiled patronizingly. Good luck with your studies, girl. Thank you, smiled Christina. The next stop was the university. The entourage lifted the heavy bag, and it seemed to her that just a little more, and she would break under the weight of the bag. Let me help you, offered a man sitting across the aisle. Together they pulled the sports bag out of the bus, and Christina, thanking her traveling companion, took a breath and moved on. But it was easy for the girl to say it seemed that the bag, which Miranda generously filled with potatoes, salty creations, and other snow weighs twice, if not 3 times more than she herself. "Can I help you?" Christina heard a woman's voice, and a woman's voice. In front of her stood a tall, thin, smiling girl who looked remarkably like Julia Roberts. She was about the same age as Christina. The girl looked at the bulk, and her gaze expressed sympathy. "Well, I don't know," Christina said shyly. "If it's no trouble, it's no trouble," assured the student. After that, they picked up the bag and carried it. It was about 30 meters to the dormitory, but to Christina it seemed like kilometers. On the way, the girls stopped 3 times and had time to get acquainted. Unexpectedly, and the assistant's name was Kelly. And she, like Christina, entered the Faculty of Philology. "So maybe we'll be placed together," Kelly suggested excitedly. "Why, am I on my own?" Christina thought. "Oh my God, am I going to have a friend?" She didn't have any friends at school. Her classmates did nothing but bully Christina. The only exception was Clara, but she'd been friends with Vanessa and Kanishev since she was a kid. Girls from other classes did not pay any attention to Christina at all, except for her nose. "Ugh," girls exhaled. "Having reached the watch, you haven't checked in yet?" asked the elderly janitor, turning to Christina. "No," and the janitor shook her head. "Went to get the commandant." Christina was put in the same room with a new acquaintance. "Don't forget to register in the dormitory," said the commandant, whose name was Olga Vasilievna, and the girls headed for the elevator. The room in which Christina was to live for 5 whole years, unless, of course, she was expelled, was on the 7th floor. Kelly had been living in the dormitory for the 4th day, so she felt familiar. However, there was no hint of showing off, so Christina immediately felt sympathy for her roommate and sincerely hoped that they would become friends. "Yeah, I remember when I moved in," Kelly giggled. "I got off the bus and my suitcase handle broke. It was a good time. Couldn't have broken in the room." Christina laughed merrily. Kelly so interestingly presented the most mundane things, and you could listen to it endlessly. "And how did you get out of it?" asked Christina. "But the world is not without good people," Kelly hummed. "On the way to the dorm, got a kind guy who did not leave the lady alone with 15 pounds of stuff." "Lucky," nodded Christina. "That's true. There are still some gentlemen out there. It's a shame the kid was busy, though." We entered the dormitory, and at the entrance stands his girlfriend. "She's pretty, by the way. She's like the moon to me." And he said, "I helped the girl carry her suitcase." And the girl said, "Oh, you're so good for me. You weren't jealous?" "No, jealous of me." Kelly laughed. "Please, you should see this doll. Dark hair down to her waist, blue eyes." "Well, I'm no match for her, but you're not ugly either," Christina said. "But you're not ugly either," said Christina. "She looks like Julia Roberts. Same duck nose," smirked the future classmate. She sighed. "You'd like my nose." "What nose?" philosophically remarked Kelly. "Any flaw can be minimized or turned into a virtue." And noticing how Christina shook with laughter, perplexed asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm just..." She choked with laughter. "I just imagined how to turn my nose into a virtue." "You this," Christina deafeningly laughed. Tears came to her eyes. Kelly, looking at her friend, joined her, and in a few seconds the girls were laughing like clockwork, unless they were Whoopi Goldberg. Through the laughter said Christina, "Well, what are you for pussyfooting around as a beauty? I, by the way, do not understand why Julia was invited for this role." "Noted," answered Kelly. "There are prettier actresses in Hollywood, and in my opinion, she fit the role perfectly." "You're right. You're good," she said approvingly. "You can laugh at yourself. You know, a little silent," thoughtfully said Christina. "And I just now realize how important it is to be able to laugh at yourself. If I had been able to do that when I was in school, I wouldn't have been bullied." Kelly looked at her sympathetically. "You were bullied, and it was because of your looks, Kathy. Well, you'll show them. He who laughs last laughs." "Fuck it," Christina, I don't know about you. What are the 2 days left before the school year starts? I intend to have fun, Kelly announced. So today we're going out on the town. Maybe not today. Christina asked hesitantly. Why wait? As they say, why put off for tomorrow what you can do today? Well, I don't know. But I do know cheerfully, exclaimed Kelly. Today, and not a day later. Christina realized it was useless to argue with her new friend. And then she realized that she didn't really want to, but to change her life for the better even more so. So what was the point? Because, as you know, water doesn't flow under a lying stone. You should wear a little brighter lipstick, said Kelly, critically examining Christina's makeup. Kelly, take pity on me, she begged. You're not gonna believe this, but this is the first time I've ever worn lipstick to prom. Oh, come on. I never would have guessed. Is there such a thing? It does. Christina sighed. And I regret it very much. All the girls at the disco danced medals with boys, and I at best danced with some sister in misfortune. You're a great girl, Kelly said quietly, squeezing her hand. You're going to be fine. Thank you. Christina also quietly replied gratefully, looking at her friend. Hey, gorgeous. Do you need Richard Gere? The girls heard a cheerful male voice. Towards them walked 2 guys. One of them was a tall, handsome blonde. He was looking at Kelly with interest. The other was shorter, not as handsome, and frowning. He was looking around absent-mindedly and clearly not in the mood for introductions. And who do we have here? Richard Gere, Kelly said cheerfully. Of course, I answered the guy and smiled disarmingly. All I was missing was Julia Roberts, and I think I found her. Yeah, they don't seem to be married. The girl laughed out loud. She clearly liked the guy, and Kelly flirted as hard as she could. The girl was smiling, and there was a playful note in her voice. Christina suddenly felt like a complete fool. Richard Gere's friend showed no interest in her. In fact, he shouldn't have been. If his friend had his eye on Kelly, it did not mean that he himself must necessarily pay attention to Christina. Kelly's new admirer's name was Stephen, and his frowny friend's name was James. Guys, why don't we go to the cafe? Stephen suggested. But I'd love to, Kelly said firmly. Really, Christina? Well, I guess so, she mumbled hesitantly. James, are you okay? Stephen asked his friend. I don't mind, James replied with a shrug. And soon they were sitting at the table and chatting merrily, destroying mouth-reading cakes with hot flavored coffee. How about something stronger, girls? Stephen made a new suggestion. In tandem with James, he was clearly the dominant one. What's that? Kelly giggled. Well, like champagne. The idea was well received, and 10 minutes later the guys were back from serving, with 2 bottles of beer, a drink, and a large dish. Start. That's our way, Christina whispered to Kelly, and she nodded languidly. Hey, what are you doing out of sorts? It's okay. Kelly looked at her friend incredulously, but the guys were coming to the table, so she didn't say anything. And then Kelly remembered what Christina had said about being bullied at school, which meant she was unlikely to be invited to parties. Her friend was clearly feeling out of place, and it was no surprise. Kelly really liked Stephen. Yeah, but what about the secular and the bitter? Actually, it would have been great if they were a couple, but James showed no signs of paying attention to Christina, and she, in turn, just didn't know how to behave in company. We'll learn. Kelly smiled to herself and turned to her friend Christina. Will you keep me company in the ladies' room? Christina nodded, and the girlfriends retired to the common areas. Christina whispered excitedly, Kelly, come on. What are you doing? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Oh, rounded on her eyes. Do you like this James guy even a little bit? I don't know, Christina shrugged. Guy's a guy, but he's crazy about you. What makes you say that? She was surprised. I could read it in his eyes. She lied with inspiration. Don't you realize James is just like you? He just needs a nudge. A nudge. What nudge? But you need to let James know you're interested in him. Frankly, Christina wasn't sure she was interested in James at all. But as her father used to say, I can't expect a prince on a white horse with my looks. She thought gloomily and wondered how to do it. Simple, exclaimed Kelly, educated by the fact that the ice has moved. Don't sit there like a mouthful of water. Participate in the conversation. Turn to James more often. Laugh and smile, and everything will be okay. It's just a matter of getting started. But come on, the guys are waiting. At first, Christina was not easy to keep the conversation, but then she was surprised to realize that it was not difficult at all. And 2 glasses of champagne did their job. Now it seemed to her that James was very well suited to a gloomy expression. It was a trick. As the guys walked them to the shuttle bus, James asked Christina to meet him. But did you? Embarrassed and blushing, he said, You'll give me your phone number. Write it down. The girl smiled. And so it turned out that the world of love became richer for 2 more couples. Despite the fact that it was not easy to learn, Christina get high. All the same, it was not in vain that I dreamed of graduating soon, thought the girl. Here she made friends, and life in general, sung by a character from a famous sitcom, turned out to be fun and interesting. Especially if you are still a freshman and all the discoveries ahead. Everything that happened in the dorm brought Christina in indescribable delight. Student parties, secret sleepovers of local students, joint preparation of dishes from everything that found in the refrigerator at the end of the week with the subsequent tasting, and even cues in the shower did not strain. But on the contrary, you nights living in the dorm, Christina mastered the art of quick washing in the shower. And after a month it ceased to seem something terrible to her. What can I say? The first month of dorm life passed under the motto, everything that doesn't kill us makes us stronger. From now on, Christina Finch was a typical homegirl used to going to bed and waking up in silence. No, yes, and had to go to the trouble of listening to music at 0 o'clock. And no one cared that she had a colloquium tomorrow. But my mom's pies and cutlets in the amount she wanted were now eaten once every 2 weeks. That is, when Christina came home for the weekend. And yet for the first time in her life, Christina Finch could say in good conscience that she was perfectly happy, especially compared to what Christina had put up with. For 11 years of high school life, she also had a boyfriend. Putting her hand on her heart, Christina did not feel for James that not earthly feeling, which so beautifully and juicily described in love novels. Rather, she was attracted to a fundamentally new role as someone's girlfriend. And is it love? Pondered Christina. Otherwise, how to explain the fact that Kelly, after a month and a half of relationship with Stephen, found another admirer of Hollywood diva and did not hesitate to move to him? Better no way, snickered her friend. I'm too young to get hung up on one guy, and I wouldn't advise you to. Christina, let's be honest. You're not in love, are you? No, she said yes. Do you want to? Kelly winked. It happens. It happens. Yeah, if it happens, the answer is automatically yes. Here's the thing, Christina. You and I are going out to a nightclub on Saturday. Oh no. Oh yes, I'm going home on Saturday. Christina remembered. Not a problem. Let's go next. Christina only sighed doubtfully. It's not like Christina didn't realize that dating a guy on the basis of being cute wasn't a good idea, as well as the fact that it's better a bird in the hand than a crane in the sky. By the way, the second was even truer, at least for Christina. But she had no idea how to tell the guy that it was over between them, just because she wished for African passions and pink clouds. But the Finch branch had no experience with guys. James was the kind of guy they say was neither fish nor flesh. He wasn't much of a talker, and he wasn't particularly proactive. And Kelly said he was incapable of action. Did Stephen say something to you? Christina assumed. I can see that. Poked her friend. No, really, Christina, but he's just like that. In a word, he's not. Didn't you want to set me up with him? She reminded me. But I did, Kelly shrugged. It's more fun to be friends together. And then perhaps the breakup with her neighbor had spurred her to find a new boyfriend for her friend too, to make it more fun to be friends. Well, if anyone was interested, it certainly wasn't Christina. The guy was courting her because that's the pattern. They had everything that is usually present in a young person's relationship, a candy bouquet period, trips to the movies where they took seats for kissing. They even had a first night, but it was all kind of stale and soulless. To come up with something original and memorable. No, not James. It's like James was just a stranger to romance. So maybe it was for the best that he wasn't romantic, her godmother said thoughtfully. When Christina came home for the weekend, she stopped by for tea. What is he studying for? A mechanical engineer. The girl smiled. At the Polytechnic Institute. But it's not the most romantic profession, Aunt Wendy remarked. I don't think it's the profession. She didn't agree. She disagreed with her godmother. My friend Kelly was dating a friend of his who goes to school there. So Stephen would surprise her, send her touching texts. He'd give her a little bouquet just because he was walking past some old lady selling flowers and thought of her. Dating? Yes, they broke up. Christina nodded. Why did they break up if they were doing so well? The godmother hummed incredulously. And Kelly wanted a change, the girl grinned. Yeah. Aunt Wendy grinned back. I guess I'm getting old. I don't get it. It was all good, but it lacked variety. Yes. She told me to follow her lead. By the way, what about you? Oh, I don't know. Christina answered with a sigh. Sometimes I think we're doing well. But it's boring without emotion. James and I have never had a fight. And the girls in the dorm say it's sometimes necessary to, like, shake things up. So maybe that's what it's all about. I don't know, Christina. I mean, you would know. But I think it's a lot simpler than that. You're just freaking out. By the way, how's he doing with his bad habits? Does not smoke with a touch of pride, answered the goddaughter. Drinks a little. And then only on special occasions. I beg you, exclaimed Aunt Wendy. A calm, non-drinking, non-smoking guy from the city is getting a higher education. And you intend to look for a good thing out of a good thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just a generational misunderstanding. But I'd advise you to stick with your James. Do you think, Christina, I wouldn't advise badly? My godmother said. I'm not. Besides, I have some experience in life. But what can a friend who hasn't even seen life yet advise? Yes, I guess you're right. Talking to Kathy put things into perspective. Thoughts of finding a replacement for James flickered and flickered in my head. And then they were safely put to rest. And no matter how much Kelly urged her to go to a club and meet an interesting guy, Christina was adamant. All 5 years of college life, Kelly and the rest of the girls in the dorm were having affairs. Christina was the only one still dating James. Almost everyone said that Christina Finch was wasting her time on relationships that wouldn't make her happy. But she didn't care. Christina didn't remember having a line of guys lining up behind her. So we'll make do with what we've got. Christina introduced James to her parents sophomore year. But what do you think of him? Heartbroken. She asked her mother. It's your boyfriend and your life, Miranda replied evasively. But we'll see. Maybe the mother, like the girls in the dormitory, had already had a premonition. By the way, James introduced Christina to his parents on the eve of the wedding, which did take place. Christina was finishing university and was preparing for defense, and the new groom worked at the factory. Having received a diploma 2 years earlier than Christina, he changed 3 jobs. Not a beauty, Vanessa shook her head. The mother of James, it was about the future daughter-in-law from whom she was not delighted. The meeting with the groom's parents had finally taken place, and it was not a pleasant one. James left to see Christina off the dormitory, and the mother-in-law was sharing her impressions with her husband. No, not beautiful, the woman repeated. Vanessa, please. Ethan wrinkled his nose. She may not be beautiful, but our son chose her, and we must honor his choice and respect his choice. Vanessa shook her hands. Ethan, What's there to respect? She's just a country girl who can't wait to settle down in the city. Oh, come on. The girl has a college degree and can expect to get a good job in the city. Why not? Besides, Vanessa, are we of the Earl's class? Remember, my dear, where you come from. And I don't understand something. The wife exclaimed with indignation. Are you reproaching me now? No, dear. I'm just reminding you that we are all human beings first of all. And the rest time will show where you saw her nose. What's her nose got to do with it? Ethan laughed. You're inimitable. Just calm down. You don't have to live with her, James. He's a grown man, and I think he knows what he's doing. After all, they dated for 5 years. I think it's Christina. Good girl, the girl, Vanessa muttered with a tightening of her lips. The chorus girl. We know the chorus girl. Vanessa poked Christina's nose wherever she could. Where you can't, though. It all started with choosing a place for the wedding banquet. Christina proposed to play a wedding in a country hotel complex, stylized under the old style. This option was suggested by Kelly, who not so long ago was there at the wedding of the sister of another boyfriend. It's really cool out there, she told Christina excitedly. And it's cheap. It's such a big place. Fresh air, nature. Out of town, so out of town, James replied, listening to the bride's proposal. Oh, how Christina wanted to believe that for James her word was law. But deep down she knew that James simply didn't care. But his moment seemed to care, and rightly so. What else would one expect from a country girl? Circus Vanessa. Fresh air. What's missing is a harmonica, like at a village wedding. What's wrong with celebrating in the fresh air? Ethan said, I'm sure there'll be lots of young people. Besides, it's fashionable to set off fireworks. But you must admit, it's easier to do it outdoors. Maybe without much conviction, replied the wife. In the week before the wedding, the mother-in-law showed her creepy character in all its glory. One day, she and James came to visit, and the future mother-in-law, having sent her son for bread, started talking about the forthcoming marriage. I hope the dress is decent, Vanessa asked arrogantly, referring to Christina's outfit for the wedding. Quite dainty, she replied. It's not like everyone's wearing cheesy mugs, snidely said the groom's mother. That's the way it is in your village, right? God, well, when this matter of her son will stop hurting her small homeland. Yes, Christina was born and raised in the village. But what's so different? Her parents and brother are different from Vanessa, other than their residential address. Oh, those stereotypes that Christina thought were out of date, but apparently not for everyone. And pardon me, she won't let anyone shit on her head. She's not the same schoolgirl who was a victim of bullying for 11 years. And in our village, it is not customary, Christina parried. As long as people love each other. Please tell me, Vanessa said ironically. What about you? Or just to settle down in the city? And at what price? It doesn't matter. But why doesn't it matter? If it didn't matter, I wouldn't have gone to university. My future mother-in-law hated it. It was the country bumpkin who dared to contradict her. She'll answer for it. In the evening, James went to escort the bride to her dormitory, and when they reached it, the groom said, Christina, Mom complained about you, she said. And what did I do to displease her? That's all I needed. In 2 days, Christina has a diploma defense, and the showdown on the eve of the wedding was not in her plans. Mom said you insulted her. James, but she didn't, Christina said, confused. Honestly, I didn't say anything to Vanessa that would offend her. Maybe she misunderstood, but I didn't mean anything bad. But you understand me too. Your mom, Christina. He interrupted. It would be better if you apologized to your mom. But why fight before the wedding? You have to admit it. He's right. Christina thought about it and said, okay, I'll apologize. Finch, did you catch Shiva? Kelly exclaimed in amazement. For what? I'm embarrassed to ask. Do you owe her an apology? Kelly, but it's not like it's gonna cost me anything. James is right. Why fight before the wedding? James is a mama's boy. Said it like a nail and a friend. And there's more to come. And I told you there were other options to consider. What can I say now, sighed Christina. But by the way, Julia, to whom everyone compares me not only in beauty played, Kelly winked. What's your point? She was in a movie about a wedding. Sang she. Christina wrinkled her forehead, remembering movies starring Julia Roberts. Best friend's wedding, she suggested. But what does that have to do with us? It has nothing to do with us. Of course, Kelly grinned. But the movie Runaway Bride is. Are you out of your mind? Yeah, I know you're not going to do that. You can't fantasize anymore. The day after graduation, Christina went to the village. Oh, Christina, I don't know what to say, Miranda said with a sigh. To be honest, I didn't really like your James right away. He's neither. In short, nothing. She smiled, remembering that Kelly had said the same thing about him. But we can't cancel the wedding, Christina said reasonably. The restaurant is booked. The dress is bought. That was true, her mother nodded. But she knew that some of the relatives had spoken up. Let him thank her for marrying her like that. Christina, you're not pretty. It's not nice. And then who says he only marries pretty girls? Take that Betty classmate from the branch. She got pregnant her freshman year. Who knows who the father is? Only her, and that's about it. There's a bad rumor going around about it. Like she doesn't know. Yeah, well, that's Betty's personal business. But the fact that she held Christina up about her looks has paid off in a big way. Betty's only 22. There's nothing left of beauty. She used to be pretty, but she's all gone. Now she was a tulip girl and a single mom. No, Miranda wasn't gloating. Though what's to hide? The thought of her daughter being an Adam had crossed her mind. But now Miranda wasn't so sure anymore. Yes, Christina had become, if not a beauty, quite a spectacular girl. Hair, makeup, good manicure. Against the background of all this splendor, even Two Big Nose looked not so terrible. But she didn't seem to be happy in this marriage. We'll see, Miranda thought philosophically. What's the point in getting yourself worked up? Finteflushki. Not without gloating, thought Christina. I have to disappoint you. Dear Vanessa, the wedding dress was magnificent, contrary to the expectations of the future mother-in-law. The bride rejected the model immediately. Lush, skirt of white chiffon and silk bodice. Nothing superfluous. The only decorative detail was a big cool rose on the shoulder. The bride's hair was styled in a high updo, and only one curl carelessly filed on the shoulder. Good enough to make Vanessa green with anger, so congratulations. In a condescendingly patronizing tone, she said, after the newlyweds agreed to walk through life with their other half, and exchanged rings. Welcome to our family. Emphasis on the word that somewhat shook the newly married daughter-in-law. Wow! And Christina thought she and James were starting their own family. After the solemn registration, the guests settled on cars and drove to the village, which was 20 kilometers from the city. But you are a happy mother. Fun? Asked Kelly. Happy, shortly said Christina. The witness on the groom's side was Stephen. The prospect of riding in the same car with her ex-boyfriend didn't bother Kelly at all. In fact, she asked how he was doing. Nothing, Stephen replied. There were a couple of kilometers to the village when suddenly they saw a woman in a bright outfit, which on closer examination turned out to be a gypsy. What do you want to live? I'm fed up with the fool, shouted the driver of the car in which the married couple and witnesses were traveling. And sending a pen nonchalantly said the gypsy woman, I'll tell you what the young couple's family life will be like. I will tell you everything. Will you live in wealth or in poverty? I'll tell you about the children. Yes, fuck you. With annoyance interrupted her driver and was about to move off. But Christina suddenly said, and I'm very interested in how much your fortune-telling costs and how much is not a pity. The fortune-teller cheered up. Christina went to the car and, taking out a smart miniature purse, took out of it a bill of $5. Will that be enough? She asked. To the gypsy. The The gypsy hid the money and told the bride to give her her hand. "Oh," said the gypsy, "I see the success of the money. A house full of money." Christina's mood rose to its highest pitch. Of course, it was only a fortune-telling, but on such a day she wanted to believe only in good things. The groom got out of the car and asked the gypsy, "Can you guess something for me too?" "Why don't you guess, handsome?" She smiled gold. A toothy smile. "Give me your hand." The fortune-teller looked at James' hand, and suddenly her face turned from swarthy to white. A woman's forehead protruded from Paris. Signals began to sound from the cars behind. But are we going or not? Someone shouted in impatience. Christina heard the angry voice of the new mother-in-law. "What are you doing here?" "Mom, it's okay," James reassured her. And the gypsy woman, taking advantage of the hiccup, whispered to the bride, Run away from this man, and you will be happy with him. I see years of torment, but it's not too late to replay it." "I don't understand." I started, Christina. But the fortune-teller was gone. It even seemed to her that there was no gypsy. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Everyone was in their own thoughts. "What did she tell you?" Kelly asked when the groom had left. "Who?" Christina didn't understand at first. "What about the gypsy girl?" "It's nothing special." The bride shrugged her shoulders. She decided not to tell her friend about what the fortune-teller had said, as if to say she would start to judge. Like, not your man should have chosen properly. But after all, it's just a fortune-teller, just a fortune-telling. Christina asked herself mockingly, "Why did you get so excited?" "Yeah," Kelly couldn't believe it. "You weren't wearing your face then." "Oh, Kelly, please." Trying to sound cheerful, said the newlyweds. "Because of some gypsy." Yeah. What are we talking about?" The groom asked with a smile. "About love." Kelly replied with a faint chuckle. James was silent. "Why talk about it?" The witness said approvingly. "What is there to talk about? You have to live it." "Guys, are you bitter?" "Bitter and bitter," caught up with the guests. "And what about the wedding trip?" Perplexed raised her eyebrows Kelly, when on the second day of the wedding, her friend told her that on Tuesday goes to get a job. Sen, well, what wedding trip? Christina grinned wryly. "James says that there's no need to spend money on nonsense." "Oh," James said. Kelly said meaningfully. "Then I have no more questions. What's all the fuss and no fight?" "Fun?" asked Stephen, putting his arm around Kelly's waist. "Women's talk," she replied coquettishly, and still asked him, "And bring me some champagne." "I will." And obeying my lady, he bowed jokingly and went to get champagne. "And what was that?" Christina inquired. "It wasn't. It was love. And who told me to choose well?" She picked on her friend. "I did. And then I realized that Stephen was the smartest, the most beautiful, but most importantly, the most beloved." "It's over," smiled Stephen after hearing Kelly's last words. He handed the ladies each a glass and said fondly, "This deserves to be encouraged with a strong kiss." Christina looked at the lovers and felt sad for some reason. "But no, hanging around in rented apartments is not for me." James shook his head. When had Christina suggested renting? Why would she? Mom had offered to live with them. That's true. It's a big place. There's plenty of room for everyone. Having failed to get her husband's support, Mom sighed heavily. She thought sadly, that's what it's all about. However, it was useless to talk to James about it. And after the scene near the dormitory, which took place shortly before the marriage, Christina and would not dare. After a year of married life, Christina was forced to state that the diagnosis of Mama's boy, set and perceptive Kelly, was correct. Turned out to be correct. As for the little one herself, sitting at the table on her wedding anniversary, she wondered how she had lived under the same roof as Vanessa. She looked at Christina arrogantly, and it didn't escape her parents and brother. "What's going on with you two?" Having had a moment, asked Miranda, "What are you talking about?" Made her daughter surprised eyes. Listening to Vanessa, So everything she didn't do, Christina, was bad. According to her mother-in-law, she couldn't cook, couldn't hold a conversation, looked terrible. She was unrealistic, and by all accounts, didn't suit her unattractive son as a woman. And she was a decent cook, and she could hold a conversation. After all, she worked with people without being naturally beautiful. Christina carefully looked after herself and paid attention to fashion trends. In short, tried to always look at the level, and she succeeded more than once. And Christina was not. But here's the latest. What did you hold a candle to? Kelly jumped when she voiced this claim to her mother-in-law. There was actually not much funny, which Vanessa deduced from. It's very simple. In their 1 year together, the couple has yet to procreate. I don't understand why you're stalling. The mother-in-law was puzzled. When Vanessa first talked about it, Christina said that she and James are not yet ready to become parents. And that was true until Christina had just started living. 5 years at the Institute were not easy, and she wanted at least a little bit of a break. That's how Christina perceived her work. Almost immediately after her marriage, she got a job as an editor in a rather successful book publishing house and established herself as a valuable employee. The job meant career advancement, and Christina did not want to miss such an opportunity. And the salary was high. That's a strong argument. What do you mean you're not ready? Splashed hands, mother-in-law. That means the young one thought to herself, your darling, your son, and you are still a child. But out loud she said the first thing that came to mind. It means that I'd like to work at least 1 more year. Well, I'll go on maternity leave. 6 months later at the publishing house. No one will even remember me. It is not a fact that after maternity leave I will return to my old place of work. However, mother-in-law did not care about her daughter-in-law's career. Vanessa did not consider her position serious. What do you think? Some publishing house disdainfully bailed mother-in-law. Talking to her friends. She should have gone to work as a teacher. But who needs her? What can teach a pacifier? For whom the family seems to be an empty sound. Her friends nodded sympathetically. And this inspired a solid woman on a new portion of nasty things to her daughter-in-law about her son's picture. Finger has not struck a finger to prove his readiness to become a father. Vanessa was delicately silent, but self-consciously described what health problems await Christina. Unless, of course, she came to her senses. Yes, none of my classmates has not yet given birth, Christina said. And for nothing, said her mother-in-law admonishingly. Modern ladies, career. But why does a woman need a career? After all, her main purpose is motherhood. And let men make careers. Christina only sighed heavily. Her husband was clearly not in the mood for a career. James didn't seem to be in the mood for anything. Otherwise, how to explain his manic passion to change jobs? James never stayed in one place for more than a month. And when asked by his wife, "What's wrong this time?" he just dismissed it as not what I need. And when Christina tried to find out what he needed, he just shrugged. And she had a sneaking suspicion that James was an ordinary bum. Vanessa said the boy was just looking for himself. Christina repeatedly recalled the gypsy woman who had blocked the path of the wedding cortege. When she told Kelly what the fortune teller had whispered to her, she shook her head. You didn't tell me about it then. What would it have been? Christina grinned. I wouldn't have had the guts to run away. What would I do? If you needed me, I would have dragged you out of there. What's to say now? She sighed doomedly. You don't have to say anything. Anyway, Christina, I'd advise you to get a divorce. I mean, really, what the hell is marriage? I, of course, do not want to interfere in your family life. But in my opinion, you cannot live like this. But don't you want to be truly happy and loved? Yes, I'm sure you would if you wanted to. There'd be a line of people waiting. Maybe, Christina said thoughtfully. But you know, sometimes I feel sorry for James. He's a bit of a loner. Who's going to feel sorry for you? Not Vanessa. So Christina, I've told you my options, and you do as you please. After talking to her friend, Christina decided to put things into perspective. Kelly's right. No matter which way you look at it, She's right. What was keeping her close to James? The answer was obvious. They weren't ready to be parents, but the truth was, it wasn't just that. Christina was convinced that children should only be born in love. But what kind of love are we talking about? She was reminded of that gypsy girl again. Christina had been thinking of her too often lately. What was that about? Who knows? Maybe Christina would have gotten up the nerve to talk about divorce. But nature decided to play a bad joke on her. One day, sitting at work, she felt sick, and on the advice of one of her colleagues made a pregnancy test. Seeing 2 stripes, Christina almost lost her senses from love. "You say babies are being born," she said out loud, not recognizing her own voice, and laughed hysterically. A little calmer Christina began to think feverishly about getting rid of the child. It was out of the question. No, no, and no again. If God gives a baby, it must be born. You've made the right decision. Miranda was serious when Christina told her the news. What if James changed and got more serious about life? Maybe that's why the baby is destined to be born. "Mom, I was thinking the same thing," Christina replied and laughed again. This time happily relieved and dreamily added, "God willing. We have a normal family. Maybe James will agree to rent an apartment too." To be honest, Miranda had little faith in that. But she couldn't tell her pregnant daughter. And what the hell? And if a miracle happened, her Vidic would come to his senses and stop running from one job to another. Putting down the Finch phone, the eldest looked at her watch. Her husband and son were about to come home from work, and over a delicious dinner, she would inform them of the impending addition to the family. "Awesome," Kelly exclaimed. "You're going to be a mom. And the rest of this is just a bunch of crap. You're strong. You're self-sufficient. You're gonna make it." "Me? Well," your friend replied meekly, although something told her the Scrolls have 2 children to raise. "There's already one. But why make a friend nervous when she's in an interesting position? Just ask the stack to have an educational talk with her friend." Meanwhile, Christina thought about how to inform about her pregnancy to the main culprit. To call or to do it at home. When she was a very young girl, she had imagined many times how she would inform her beloved husband that they were having a baby. Christina dreamed that it would be beautiful and romantic, like in the movies. And then it dawned on her Christina will buy a beautiful Pinard, cook James a romantic dinner, and set the table in the bedroom. And underneath it all she'll tell her husband that now there will be 3 of them and everything will be fine. By the way, there were some preconditions. At the last place of work, James stayed for 4 months. And it was a record. The young woman was so excited about the idea that she wanted to go home early. Christina no longer thought about the fact that they did not live alone, and how many people would feel about it. Dear Vanessa, it was 20 minutes before the end of the day. Actually, she could have closed her office, and she could have gone home without anyone saying a word. But Christina Finch was a sensitive lady. She called the director and only after getting the go-ahead went to the office to get her purse. When Christina was leaving the publishing house, she suddenly saw the same fortune teller Ramella crossing the road and walking straight towards her. Or was it another gypsy woman? Who could tell? They all looked alike. When they crossed each other, Ramella suddenly looked at Christina with a hard stare. The gypsy's gaze was screaming at her to run away before it was too late. She didn't even realize that the fortune teller had said those words aloud. Christina felt uncomfortable. But after a moment, she forgot about the gypsy. There were more important things in her life now. Christina plowed into the apartment, and with a smile, looking at herself in the mirror hanging in the hallway with pleasure, noted that the pregnancy has not yet affected her appearance. The girls at work were frightened by drugstore and pigment stains, but nothing like that. Christina has not matured. Quite the opposite. She had never liked herself so much. A blush played on her cheeks. Her eyes sparkled. "Why are you so cheerful?" muttered the father-in-law with suspicion, looking at his daughter-in-law. So evasively answered Christina and smiled enigmatically. All more she will not give in to any provocation. Now she had to take care of herself for the sake of the baby. Meanwhile, Vanessa was watching TV and thought she had a lover. There you go. Christina washed her hands and went to her and James' bedroom. What time will you be there? Playfully, she asked her husband. I'm all, James answered, and I could hear the surprise in his voice. There was no such thing as play and flirting in their relationship, but maybe we should try to make it happen. And it was up to Christina, by the way. She is a woman after all. And what were those thoughts in her head? Ironic, thought the mother-to-be. No other way than pregnancy has affected me. Hormones in the head hit everyone. Questioned Christina. That's good. That's good. James was clearly puzzled, and it made her laugh. Christina, what's wrong? Indecisive? Asked the husband. But in general, yes, she replied with a smile. And what is it? Let's not talk on the phone. All right. What was that? James thought, disconnecting some strange voice here, asking what time I'll be there. And that was really something new, had Christina found out. Frightened, he thought, well, maybe it's for the best, especially in my situation. When James first saw Christina, she seemed so defenseless to him. Did James like her? More like no than yes. The girl was hardly beautiful, and she was silent all the time. How do you know what she was like? Maybe she's mute. But here Christina, with a friend strikingly similar to Julia Roberts, came out of the ladies' room, as they like to call the most common toilet. It was like the girl had been replaced. Kelly must have indoctrinated the girlfriend. But he, James, decided to take a closer look at her, and he did. No, she wasn't beautiful, but she had a nice figure. And by the way, she's got taste. About such usually say interesting, spectacular with a twist. But of course, Krupnova is not the right word, but well-matched hairstyle and neat makeup negated this flaw. You can say that the nose was the very highlight. What is enough to remember Barbra Streisand or Kathy? Christina, a girl economic, in addition, serious, without wind in her head. So he should marry her. But his mom is a push-button, and she didn't like her future daughter-in-law right away. It's like I'm caught between two fires, he complained to his friend Stephen. I don't understand what's wrong. Surprised, asked the latter. Go away from your ancestors, and you will be happy. Christina said the same thing, sighed James. So what's the problem? Well, how can I put it? He hesitated. I just think it might offend Mom. Well, gosh darn it. Stephen laughed. You're inimitable. Unmarried people don't get married and want to move out of their parents' house. And this two-legged man is afraid to offend Mom. Igor, no offense. I respect Vanessa, but I get the feeling she's manipulating you. She doesn't like Christina, James said with a sigh. But it's more like she's jealous. You're her only son, and here's Christina. Yeah, not fun, he chuckled. Hillbilly chick hooks up with a city boy to settle down in the city. That's what your mom says. Stephen guessed it. Who else would it be? But you know, grinned the friend. Even if Christina was a native of the city from a family of academics or businessmen, it would hardly change anything. Aunt Vanessa would find other arguments against your wife nice, and she doesn't mean that about Christina. She's a self-sufficient girl, so go with the one without a choice. That's easy for James to say. He wasn't used to crossing his mother. Even when Vanessa hurt Christina, he couldn't say anything to her. James berated and shamed himself for it, but he couldn't help it. But he wasn't known for his determination, especially when it came to his mother. And shortly before their wedding anniversary, James met Adriana. This gorgeous, bright, and extraordinary girl turned his life upside down. Adriana was a manager at a private car service center where James had once again taken a job. And it seemed to be love at first sight. That's why he'd been here for 4 months and would probably leave in one single case if the car repair shop went under. Adriana was a vibrant brunette of skin, golden honey-colored, piercing with black eyes, and a stunning figure. One shot of those beautiful eyes and James was blown away. After a week he realized, if this girl wasn't mine, I would get sick and die. So James decided to win her over at all costs from the first advance. He gave Adriana a gorgeous bouquet of roses and unexpectedly invited her to a movie. James told his wife that he was delayed at work due to an urgent order. Young people took places for kissing and, without wasting time, immediately took advantage of it. He remembered going to the movies with his entourage. It was heaven and earth. My God, what I've deprived myself of for 6 whole years. Desperate, James thought. Christina could have been happy. After all, we didn't and don't have any love. From that day on, work was the only place James felt comfortable. It wasn't just work, though. One day, he and Adriana had gone to get some spare parts and ended up at her house. Their passion was at its peak, and it was foolish to deny it. After a frenetic dance of love, they ate store-bought salads and drank juice out of a cardboard box. James imagined how his mother's eyes would have rounded at the sight of such a Snyder and laughed merrily. Plebeian and food would have been carelessly tossed to Vanessa. By the way, that was the one thing she was in solidarity with the socialite Christina on. Thinking of his wife, James gloomed. She doesn't deserve to be deceived by me, he thought. And neither does Adriana. But how do I tell her that I'm married? Adriana asked, noticing the look on his face. Adriana, James began. He took in a chestful of air. And then he stopped talking. I'm listening to you, she smiled. Adriana, I probably should have told you that right away. I really liked you as soon as I saw you, and now I realize it's more than just liking you. I love you, Adriana. And I love you, Adriana replied, looking into his eyes. Hot dates with eating soldiers, which now seemed like James. The most delicious food on Christina continued. It had been almost 4 months, and he still hadn't dared to tell Adriana that he was married. One day, James arrived at work, and when he confronted Adriana, she said she didn't want to see him anymore. What's wrong? He asked. Although he guessed that James realized that sooner or later Adriana would find out about his marital status. And you're still asking, she confirmed James's assumptions. Adriana's voice was ringing with indignation. How could you? Yesterday, my friends and I were sitting in a cafe, and when I showed them your picture, one of the girls recognized you. She works at a book publisher. To be continued. James chose to remain silent. Everything secret sooner or later comes to light. Adriana wrung her hands. Besides, in the age of social media, you can't hide anything. I wanted to tell you, he said humiliatedly. I really did, but you didn't. Anyway, James, it's over between us. I didn't find myself in a dumpster to share you with someone else. The girl nailed him and asked him to leave the office. James was desperate. He wanted to be with Adriana, but he didn't know how to tell Christina. For a whole week, James wasn't himself. Did something happen to you? His mother asked at dinner. No, he answered, glancing at her and then at his wife. Then he added, for good measure, that it was just a hard day at work. Where's Christina? James asked. Was she in your room? Her mother replied with a tight lip and turned away defiantly. Another fight. No, Vanessa shrugged. The son looked at her incredulously, but said nothing. When he entered the bedroom, he was almost speechless. Christina was sitting in a chair, dressed in a pretty lilac stump, and smiled. Hi. Check. Hi. James said in a confused voice. You are so beautiful today. Her husband's confusion amused Christina. Really? She asked flirtatiously. Yes, we have some kind of holiday. Christina got up from the chair and, approaching her husband, put her hands on his shoulders. James, I have something to tell you. But first, she didn't have time to say anything. Vanessa burst unceremoniously into the room. James, are you having dinner? She asked curiously, looking at her son and daughter-in-law. Wait, Mom, James waved her off later. The mother abruptly slammed the bedroom door and defiantly bluntly retreated to the hall and hung onto the boy like a street girl. Quietly, she muttered. Christina fell asleep. Her husband couldn't resist smiling at James either. Really, are you hungry? Tilting her head to the side, the young woman asked. Well, I am. He nodded. It's been fun, Christina said, pointing to a beautiful coffee table server, which James hadn't even noticed from excitement. And what are you going to feed her? Your favorite vegetables, the wife smiled. Oh, James stretched out happily and rubbed his hands together in anticipation of a delicious dinner. And what are you dissatisfied with again? Ethan glanced at his wife with a sidelong glance. That nasty person from the collective farm is hanging on to our son. Ugh. The husband grunted in surprise. Vanessa, do you have a fever by any chance? He asked. He touched his wife's forehead to make sure. Vanessa took offense. You should have seen what kind of robe she was wearing. How? God forgive me. What was that about? Vanessa. Ethan said in a belittling tone. But why do you always look for a catch where there isn't one? It's like you were never young. Come on, defend her. I asked him to dinner. Why would he want his mother's borscht when there's a country courtesan in a robe waiting in the bedroom? The husband only sighed heavily. Delicious, James said approvingly. And that would be all right. But what was the fly that had bitten Christina? And then it hit him. What if she knew about Adriana and me? And now she was trying to keep me away. It was flattering, but something made it hard to believe. Christina's a girl with a pivot, James pondered. And if she really knew something, she wouldn't have held the city back. But then what's the point? What's the point though? You kind of wanted to say something, he reminded her. I wanted to say something cryptic, Christina smiled. Anyway, James, I'm not going around. Yeah, about me being pregnant. What? Her husband interjected and coughed, almost giving chunks from the beer. James couldn't help but realize that theoretically, it wasn't that unrealistic. Even when his and Adriana's affair was in full swing, he had faithfully fulfilled his marital duty. And tender loves and burning passions. Of course, it was out of the question. But there was guilt, and notoriously so, because that's the way it's supposed to be. So that's what it's supposed to be. James' reaction puzzled Christina. He was clearly shocked. Only Christina didn't understand whether her husband was happy or not. She patted James on the back and handed him a glass of mineral water. Thank you, gratefully, said the husband, and added, so I'm going to be a father. Yes, Christina confirmed with a smile. The news of the impending addition to the family didn't seem to upset James, who was thinking, well, that's it. Adriana still doesn't want to see me, and I'm a married man who's going to be a father soon. Christina, well, that's great. He was doing his best to act excited, but Christina couldn't believe it. James, I'm glad. God, would they finally be like other loving couples? Christina remembered today's encounter with the gypsy, and immediately pushed that memory away with annoyance. To hell with it. Euphoric, she thought. James, glad. And the rest is just nonsense. Adriana stared blankly at the 2 red stripes and berated herself. But how could I have been so frivolous? And all the crazy passion that had caught up with her for the first time in 2 years. That was exactly how long it had been since she had broken up with Sasha. Before meeting James, Adriana hadn't graced any guy with her favor. For one thing, she wanted to take a break. And secondly, Adriana wasn't interested in anyone. James reminded her of a defenseless child. It was only later that Adriana realized that was what attracted her to him. And when Adriana found out that her feelings were mutual, she decided James was the man with whom I could be happy and to whom I was ready to give a lot of happiness. The affair was dizzying. Adriana felt like she and James were in the clouds. But how painful was it to fall? What to do you think? Jean asked. The same friend who worked at the same publishing house as Christina. Give birth. What else? Adriana had terminated her pregnancy a few years ago, when she was a student, a sophomore at NICE. She was sure she would never become a mother again, and berated herself for being a coward. This time, Adriana decided not to tempt fate. She will give birth to this child, and let James live as he knows how. Adriana will not break up the family, much less humiliate herself. I don't want anything from him. You can count on me, Jean said, taking Adriana's hand in hers. I know, she smiled. And thank you very much. You're welcome. When Christina and James informed his parents that they were going to be grandparents, Ethan rejoiced. Well done, he nodded with a smile. God willing, it won't be the last. And Vanessa shook her lips in displeasure and said, Has Her Majesty really done it? What about his career? The career can wait, Christina said nonchalantly. She did not expect any other reaction from her mother-in-law, so she was not offended at all. Come on, you cut the argument short. James and all three of them looked at him in amazement. James decided to show some character. Future fatherhood was clearly good for him. Family life went on as usual. They lived in expectation of an heir, and Christina never ceased to be amazed at the changes in James's behavior. He became more attentive, and it seemed incredibly touching. Ethan, who had behaved quite good-naturedly before. After learning about the pregnancy, his sisters-in-law went to the supermarket and seemed to buy up all the fruit. Vanessa stopped nagging about nothing. Well, thank goodness for that. One evening, Christina got a call from her mother. Christina, would you like to live in the country for a while? Miranda suggested it. Mom's on maternity leave anyway. Yes, I would love to, exclaimed the young woman. What's the need? Dad and I are going to a resort in Thailand. With pride answered the mother and sighed. I would ask Davidka. Does she understand? Christina understood. Her brother David had moved to the neighboring village to his girlfriend and was not an arrogant and terribly jealous person. Sophia had immediately insisted on moving in with her. There was a good and well-maintained house left by her grandmother. It was jealousy and feisty girls to the point of absurdity. Once, when their married life with David was just beginning, and I thought that a young salesgirl was making eyes at him. She's probably not the only one, Sophia said. As the young men left the store, here's the thing, my dear. You will only come here with me. If for some reason I can't make it, you won't go anywhere either. David worked at a service station 24/7, and there was really nothing stopping him from staying with his parents, except for the jealous girlfriend. Since Sophia worked at the local school, she couldn't keep her roommate company. As it happened, her parents had to ask Christina about it. But go, James said after a little thought. I can't work. Yes, I understand, nodded Christina. To tell the truth, the young woman was a little disappointed. She had thought James would say how much he would miss her. Apparently, he just hadn't realized it. Christina reassured herself. James just needed time. Well, why don't you go? He smiled. It's nice in the countryside in winter. The air is so fresh. Will it do you and the baby good? Yes, she smiled back. James, is something wrong? His father asked, looking at him intently. The son, hiding his eyes, sighed heavily. Today he had learned that Adriana was expecting a baby. At first, James thought that the girl he had never forgotten was just getting better. But when rumors spread around the car service that Adriana was going on maternity leave, James physically felt an electric shock run through him. It's his baby. Son, don't be silent, Ethan said. Nothing's wrong. James mumbled uncertainly. I've known you for 28 years, and I can sense the slightest change in your mood. So spit it out, James. And to make it easier for you, let's have a little one. Come on. The son waved his hand. Suddenly, he wanted not just a little drop, but to get drunk. Of course, he realized that the problem wasn't going anywhere, but temporary relief was a good thing. Sometimes, Ethan brought a bottle of his own currants and tincture from the bar. He sliced cheese, ham, and tomatoes, and said to himself and his son in a sedate manner. But it felt good and warm all over his body, and James felt a little better. But said the father, tell me what happened. I don't know where to start, but start somewhere, Ethan grinned. I fell in love with someone else. You did? He exclaimed in amazement. A long time ago, about 6 months ago. True, we broke up. But if you broke up, what are you talking about? Father didn't understand. Then maybe it's not love at all. It can happen. You're an adult. So I'll tell you man to man, I'm not a saint either. Love, James sighed, ignoring the racy innuendo. You broke up over what? Adriana found out I was married. And recently I found out she was pregnant. Yeah, the man said thoughtfully. After a moment's silence, he asked, Are you sure it's yours? I'm sure, nodded the son. Adriana is going on maternity leave, so the timing fits. Yes, the situation stretched Ethan. For the first time in a while, Vanessa was happy to be home. On a gossipy, soul-searching trip with an old pal, she rode the shuttle bus and anticipated. And here was the third night without Christina. Sure, the hated daughter-in-law had only been away in her village for a couple of weeks, but at least she wouldn't have to see that face for a while. James, and where did he find her? Once again, Vanessa thought. She went up to the apartment when she heard the excited voices of her husband and son from the kitchen. Vanessa realized that they were discussing some hot topic over a hot drink. The woman wanted to enter the kitchen and let her know she was coming. But when she heard her daughter-in-law's name, she decided to refrain for the time being. And it seems, for good reason. What can I advise you? Vanessa heard her husband's thoughtful voice. Only to help the child financially, or Adriana doesn't want to see you. While with Christina you are doing well. Adriana, she marveled. James has another woman. Well, that's great. It's a great excuse to kick that redneck out of here. Pregnant. That's a big deal. Alimony's still on the books. Let her go back to her collective farm. It didn't even occur to Vanessa that she might not like her supposed new daughter-in-law either. Her dislike for Christina was truly boundless. Right, Ethan, said James, can help the child financially. Vanessa thought approvingly, not even realizing that she was to become a grandmother of 2 grandchildren. Hello, Eagles, she said cheerfully, swinging open the kitchen door. And here is our mother, smiled for Camilla of Ethan, and nodding at half a bottle, offered his wife to take from Moro's. Well, if only from Moro's. What's the occasion of the banquet? It's not a banquet. Edifyingly, said the husband, raising up his index finger. It's a man-to-man talk. Well, if you're having a man's talk, I won't interrupt you. Vanessa, come on. I was just kidding. It's okay. She smiled. Vanessa wanted to dance, to think that her son had finally had an epiphany. She walked out of the kitchen, pulled her cell phone out of her bag, and quickly dialed Anna's number, the same friend she'd just gotten back from. Vanessa was terribly curious about who Adriana was, but she didn't ask her son. Not James, not Ethan. Didn't even realize she'd heard their conversation. Christina was 2 days away from arriving. I wish she hadn't come at all, especially since, as it turned out, Christina had nothing to do here. Well, that could easily be arranged, Vanessa realized. Just pick the right moment and get her out of here. No problem. She heard her son's voice as she passed his bedroom. I'll meet you there. Just call me when you get into town. I guess James is talking to his wife. Vanessa smiled slyly. Her plan was as simple as genius. It wasn't really a plan, just a little diversion for the good of the family. Have you talked to Christina? Vanessa asked her son when he came out of the bedroom, dressed in a bathrobe. Aha. And when is she coming? Innocently inquired the mother. She'll be in town tomorrow at 4, but you're at work at that time. So, Christina will call me and I'll meet her. Mom, I'm going to the bathroom. If anyone calls, you answer it. Tell them I'll call them back later. Got it, she nodded. And after waiting until James, from the sound of it, had dipped into the bathroom, she went into their bedroom. Vanessa, furtively, looked around and finally found what she was looking for, a cell phone. Her son had found Christina's number, and she quickly blocked it. Now let her call as much as she likes, thought the treacherous mother-in-law with gloating satisfaction. Not understanding anything perplexed Christina. We had agreed. She had already dialed her husband's phone number 15 times. But James didn't answer. Even if he was very busy at work, he could have texted. Christina pondered. The clock was already showing 4:40. Still no response from James. She bent under the weight of 2 bags with lines, jam and gifts from Thailand, showing cab stands. Girl, why are you pushing such heavy things? I heard a nice male voice in your position. Where does your husband look? Or is there no husband? She wanted to say it's none of his business. A handsome guy, about 27 years old, picked up the bags and asked you to the bus stop. I'd like a cab, answered Christina with a nod, pointing to the parking lot, where a cavalcade of cars with checkers lined up. Reasonably agreed the unexpected assistant. And you know, God himself sent me to you. That's true, laughed Christina, although she was not amused at all. What's the matter? Why isn't James answering? Maybe something's wrong. You don't get it, do you? The guy grinned. I'm just a cab driver. Then God really did send you to me, she agreed. The cab driver asked from the dacha, deftly dumping the bags into the trunk. Why did you think so? Christina asked in surprise. What's so strange about it? She came with groceries, among which you can guess jars of pickles and tomatoes. Usually with all these things come from the village. Christina doesn't look like a student with her almost 8-month belly. The guy's so embarrassed. Just wondering where we're going. Minen Street. I see. The cab driver answered in a cheerful voice and started the engine. On the way they got to talking. The guy's name was Mason. And what's your name? Beauty? He asked with a smile. Christina shyly, she answered. Talking to a strange man made her a little embarrassed. Nice to meet you, Christina. I hope they will meet you at the entrance. I don't know, sighed the young woman. Her husband promised to come and didn't. Mason guessed. No, he called and didn't answer. I'm afraid something might happen. But let's hope for the best. I wish, sighed Christina. When they pulled up, the young woman dialed James' number again. There was no answer. The cab driver asked sympathetically. She shook her head. Let me help you carry the bags. The services of a rapist are free of charge. Mason couldn't help but smile. But Christina, let's say goodbye, said Mason at the door. The guy's voice sounded sad. It made her feel uncomfortable. Christina started to open the door, but it suddenly swung open. Surprised. Vanessa said angrily, actually, the mother-in-law should be at work. Christina suddenly had a bad feeling. Did something really happen? Vanessa, honey, is something wrong? She exclaimed. How cute I am, she hissed. But you got that right, something's wrong. Something's wrong with James. Christina asked fearfully, deciding to ignore the tone. Vanessa, it wouldn't hurt to find out what happened first. It's just that I called him many times, and he doesn't answer. Her mother-in-law interrupted her impolitely and laughed deafeningly. Don't wait up. What's the matter? Christina couldn't stand it. She had already realized that nothing terrible had happened to her husband. James had finally come to his senses. Vanessa proclaimed triumphantly. He's in love with another woman. No match for you and ideas without looking back. There's nothing more for you to do here. James has blacklisted you. Don't you realize you're no match for my son? Go and get your stinking Solomina. I don't want to talk to you anymore. But James and I just talked yesterday, and he promised to meet me. Christina said incredulously. Look, you're a country cow. And the fact that you were blocked without explanation is not an argument. The mother-in-law got angry. Christina couldn't believe what her mother-in-law was saying. Yeah, but James' cell phone really wasn't answering. In that amount of time, he could have seen her calls, or at least missed calls, more than once. Besides, knowing James's indecisive nature, it could be assumed that the hubby had chickened out. Christina didn't want to believe it, but everything pointed that way. Still, I'd like to talk to James, she said firmly. Even if it is as you say, I want to look him in the eye. You want to do what you want, Vanessa shouted in her sister-in-law's face, stepping on her. She pushed Christina in the shoulder. She lost her balance, swung her arms awkwardly, and tumbled down the stairs. "Oh God," the woman said in horror. "But I didn't mean to do it." She did. "What's going on here?" the upstairs neighbor asked. The man was coming downstairs and seeing Christina lying between the floors, turned pale, and she herself, as if in delirium, repeated Vanessa. She really didn't want to. "What's the matter with the girl?" the man bellowed. "She's herself, Vanessa." The neighbor above, whose name was Jacob, approached Christina and, making sure she was alive, yelled at the woman. "What are you standing there for? Call an ambulance. She's on her own." The neighbor had his doubts about that. He had heard Vanessa scold his sister-in-law more than once and had probably pushed her down the stairs. Perhaps it was unintentional. But either way, the young woman needed medical attention. Taking a closer look at the neighbor, Jacob realized she was in shock and took matters into his own hands. The man took his cell phone out of his pocket and promptly called an ambulance. "Be patient, sweetheart," the man coaxed. He really liked this interesting young woman. What can't be said for the slimy neighbor? Had Ethan been lucky enough to marry that girder? Jacob thought. But there was nothing to be done. Vanessa was still in a state of shock, and therefore she too needed medical attention. The ambulance arrived about 10 minutes later. The doctors loaded Christina into the car, and the remaining doctor asked a concerned neighbor with whom Vanessa lives, her husband, her son, and the young woman who was taken away. "You can contact them. There's no point in taking the woman to hospital, but you shouldn't leave one behind." The door to the apartment was open, and Jacob helped the doctor usher Vanessa into the apartment. She herself repeated the woman as if wound up. "So, can you contact the husband or the son?" The doctor repeated his question. "Yes, of course," nodded the neighbor. "I have Ethan's number," where I was singing Christina in a weak voice. Slowly spilled into my eyes. In the hospital, she heard a voice, and when she opened her eyes, she saw a man in a white coat. "How am I here? Did your neighbor call for an ambulance?" Christina remembered what had happened, and her face turned as pale as chalk. "What's wrong with my baby?" she asked. "Christina Vladimirovna, you now need to rest, sleep, and then we will talk to you." "What's wrong with my child?" persistently said the young woman. "I'm very sorry," the doctor replied. The baby could not be saved. Christina turned her back to the wall and sobbed bitterly. The next day, James came to see her. "Christina, I am very sorry," he said gently. "Sorry?" Christina grinned mockingly. "What about the woman of your dreams?" "What woman?" "You know, the one who's not like me. Like your mom said before." Her lips quivered. "What the hell is this?" James exclaimed. "Her mom doesn't know her." When he realized he'd made a mistake, he fell silent and then spoke awkwardly. I was going to say." "Don't," James with a sad smile, and shook his head. "Christina, if you really loved another woman, then run to her and make her happy. And of course, be happy yourself." "Christina, you are extraordinary," quietly said the husband. "Thank you, and you be happy too." "I will try." Christina nodded, and tears appeared in her eyes. "But run along, and when I'm better, we'll get a divorce." When James went to see his now almost ex-wife, he was in the mood for a difficult conversation, but it went well. "Christina's great," he thought on his way to the bus stop. He had to get to work, but first, James would go to a few places. The prices at the jewelry store were touching, but James didn't mind. He'd gotten his paycheck the other day and had barely spent it. James' attention was drawn to a gold ring with a rich framing of tiny diamonds, just right for the color of Lenny's eyes. He thought enthusiastically and without hesitation bought the ring. "You have excellent taste in simple metal young, spectacular blonde. Come again. Do you want it for a gift, or do you have some other occasion?" The pretty flower girl asked with a smile. "Today I'm proposing to the best girl on Christina," James announced solemnly. "What are roses then?" The girl nodded understandingly. "Pay attention to these dark red ones. The saints were indeed a miracle. How good the petals of piercing dark scarlet color seemed velvet. Fragrance. I wonder what Garden of Eden they grow in, James thought. The main thing is not to lose the romantic mood. When James arrived at work, the first thing he did was to run to Adriana's office. The colleagues looked at each other meaningfully. And you are the one who indifferently threw Adriana. She was packing, and she clearly did not care about James. It's nothing that can be easily remedied. At least, that's what he hoped. Yes, that's me, said James decisively, handing her the roses and getting down on one knee. Adriana, I love you and I want to be with you. She wanted to say something, and it was something that James obviously didn't like, so he immediately took matters into his own hands. Adriana, sweetheart, my darling, I know what you're going to say. Yes, I'm married, but now it's just a matter of weeks. Christina and I are getting a divorce, and as you can see, there's nothing stopping us from being together. Adriana, marry me. In one breath, James blurted out and took out a velvet box from his pocket and handed it to his beloved. From the side of the entrance, a great applause was heard. Verka, say yes. Someone shouted. Yes, quietly said the happy bride and laughingly added, getting up from her knees. Hero lover. James obeyed. He approached Adriana and gently stroked her belly. He whispered, do you know who we are going to have? She whispered back, we're having a girl. A month later, the lovers signed. And another month later, they had a baby girl whom they named Christina. I hope you won't be jealous. James asked. If you don't mind. I don't mind. His wife shook her head with a smile. Personally, I think of your ex as a kind of Cupid. The newly minted young father laughed. I wonder how Christina would feel about such a comparison. Cupid. After the divorce, Christina plunged headlong into work. Thank God, she and James parted peacefully, you could say friends. After maternity leave and divorce, the first thing Christina did was freshen up her hair and update her closet. You're gorgeous, Kelly said enthusiastically. Divorce has obviously been good for you. Trust me, you won't be alone for long. You know, Kelly, I've decided to take it slow. Like you said, we have to choose. The friends laughed merrily. Christina, to you another talent, announced Secretary Veroshka. Let her come in. She nodded wistfully, imagining a conversation with the next graphomaniac, which are scattered like mushrooms after the rain. When the visitor came and Christina was dead, standing in front of her was Mason, the cab driver, the same cabbie who'd driven her away that day when, well, don't mention the sad part. Christina, Mason, they said each other's names in sync and laughed merrily. Let's see what you got. Christina switched to a businesslike tone. I'm writing poetry. Don't laugh. Why would I laugh? It's my job. Mason's poems, though simple and uncomplicated, ran to the goosebumps. As you got into the cab, did you smile, or was it just me? When Christina read these lines, she felt herself blushing. It didn't take much intelligence to realize who these poems were about. Not bad. Not bad at all. She nodded approvingly and repeated the last line, but unfortunately not fluently. Christina, Mason, you have the wrong information. Unexpectedly, she said. What are you talking about? He didn't get it. Christina mumbled embarrassedly, thinking, what am I doing? It's just that my husband and I divorced 2 months ago. I'm sorry, said Mason. Though in fact roses, tulips, and other fauna slowly but surely began to bloom in his soul. There is nothing to be sorry about. Christina waved his hand. Our marriage was doomed from the beginning. Oh, I'm sorry. Why? Surprise, cab driver. The poet was just being frank. Well, sometimes people need to talk, he said. Christina, yes. Would it be impertinent of me to invite you to a cafe? Why not? Christina smiled. Mason was easy and fun. The young people switched to the first name. After that, it seemed to both of them that they knew each other for 1,000 years. How long have you been writing poetry? Asked Christina. Since high school, answered Mason. Be honest. My poems have a chance of being recognized. How can I put it? To be honest, poems as such are not in trend right now, but they're good for Toastmasters greeting cards and stuff like that. Well, thank you for your candor. After the cafe, Mason took Christina to the apartment she rented after the divorce. You can come in, she offered. I have very tasty tea, but raspberry and currant flowers with lemon are cosmos. After the tea ceremony, Mason left, and Christina grabbed her phone. Kelly, I think I'm in love, she declared. I think, no, you don't. I'm in love, and I think I'm in love for good. But love that is, I hope, a mutual declaration of love has not sounded. Christina replied in a low voice. Oh, Kelly, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? By the way, what's his name? Mason. Well, either you and Mason are gonna have something or you're not. There's no three ways about it. That's not optimistic, more like realistic, and it's pretty much up to you. Remember that night at the coffee shop with the wall and James? So what? And the fact that then you did it all. And if you want, it will work out and this time, said her friend. The past year had been eventful. No sooner had the wedding of Stephen and Kelly rumbled off. David told his sister he was getting married. Don't tell me you're marrying Sophia. Christina was horrified. I won't, laughed her brother, because I'm marrying Sophia. My fiance's name is Evelyn, and I'll bet you'll like her. Evelyn really did like her a lot. But most importantly, Christina caught the bride's bouquet. Looks like I can't get out of this one. Mason jokingly waved his hands and promised to come back to this conversation, which he did a week later. It's like a wedding boom, Kelly said with a smile. Although we have Stephen, and the other news is science, science, science. We're having a baby. Congratulations, Christina exclaimed. This is really great news. And a month after the wedding, Christina proudly informed Mason that they too would become parents. The baby was sleeping serenely and advised touchingly. Christina opened Messenger and ran through the congratulations with a smile. She received congratulations from her brother and son, Hihi's parents, from aunt, colleagues, classmates, and even from her ex-husband and his Adriana. And Rick opened his blue milky eyes and poked the phone at that time. Sweetheart, come to the window, read the message. Well, shall we go meet Daddy? Gently whispered Christina and went to the window. The happy young father stood in the courtyard of the maternity hospital with a bouquet of roses and a bunch of balloons. On the biggest balloon it was written, "Thank you for your son," and the happy young mother held her baby in her arms and looked at her husband with a smile. Tears of happiness were flowing down her cheeks.